is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Tuesday show, gang. Gigantic slate to talk about for fantasy baseball tonight. 13 games on deck starting at 7:05. 3:30 start for the show. Not too late, not too early. We got to cruise on through, make some good time through everything. But we've got a lot to talk about, and we've got some time to do it. So shouldn't be too bad. Got a good crowd already in the chat. Cujo's here. Hope your day's going well too, buddy. 13 games. Let's see if we can get some wins. I like it. Trey's here. Colin Sutherland. Colin, before I forget, were you reading a fantasy series a couple months ago that was something like 2 separate trilogies? Yeah, I read the first 3 books, which are a self-encapsulated trilogy, and then there's a second trilogy that's set a little bit later in like the same timeline. That I haven't read yet, but it's the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. Really good stuff. Really like it. It's like a grimdark fantasy kind of a thing. Kind of, one foot in a grounded kind of a world. Lot more George Martin than it is Tolkien, but it kind of carves its own lane because he's pretty funny. And he's got some just kind of unique takes. And it's an interesting story that he weaves. I like it. Really enjoyed the books. Gonna go back to it, and I've heard that the second trilogy is even better. So I'm actually looking forward to it. He wrote a few one-off books that are also in that world that are like between the 2 trilogies that I've just kind of been stumbling on because it's like, I gotta go read an individual book in between before I get back to the story that I was kind of already reading. So I gotta get through those, but apparently those are also really, really good. But yeah, I recommend Joe Abercrombie. Good writer. I enjoyed his stuff. So if you like George Martin and you're, obviously The Winds of Winter isn't coming out for another 5-10 years, if ever, check out Joe Abercrombie if you've never checked him out and you like George Martin. Shano was just answering the question that Colin asked. We've only been on for a minute or two, but I was just answering Colin's question about I was reading a fantasy series that was divided into 2 separate trilogies, as he put it, a couple months ago. But yeah, monster slate, so we're going to kind of dive on in. Lone Wolf is here, Trey's here, Andy's here, Still the Poop is here. First time enjoying the show from the pool. Geek Heaven, yeah, it sounds like, not bad. Monty Pritchett's here. Do we have like a one of those floaties with the beverage holders in it and everything, and you just got your laptop like floating around the pool also on another little float? Kind of like Axel Foley style, Beverly Hills Cop 2. I like that. Best of luck today to you too, Monty. I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for showing up, always. So, let's dive into this thing. Sure do. I figured there was a beverage involved there, Fistula. So, let's get into this. Just a few lineups in. I just threw an update up on the site, so check those out for the confirmed lineups. Yanks lineup is in. A couple of the others from the early games here. But really interesting. We've got kind of a mixed bag of pitching. There's a couple premium options up top that I'm sure are going to get popular. There's a pretty broad mid-range of like same kind of pitchers in a mixed, a wide variety of spots. And the low end isn't crazy. There's not a gigantic low end. Like you can definitely argue for Javier Assad in a return. Some of these lower end guys, not Matthew Boyd against the Yankees, I don't think. Not Brian Salmons in bulk relief all the way down there. But there's a case to be made for a lot of guys on this board. So I do think it's a deep pitching slate, and there's a lot of different ways to put it together. So with 13 games on deck, it's going to be kind of interesting. We also don't have any team above 5, at least as of when I put this together a little while ago. Closest is the Giants in San Francisco at 4.93 implied runs. It's a pretty interesting looking spot, obviously, for that San Francisco offense. The Dodgers at 4.69 after that, and then everybody else in like the mid 4s, or excuse me, the Royals at 4.7, and then everybody else in the mid to low 4s or below. Really interesting, and it's kind of reflective of the depth of the pitching slate. All those teams that are below 4, all those teams in the low 4s. Again, a lot of quality mid-range Ronald Blanco, Bryce Miller type pitchers on deck today. So, a lot of different directions to take things. Guardians, and that was a loud swallow. Hopefully that like clicked out into the microphone. Guardians against the Yankees, an 8-run total in the Bronx. Should be a good series. Let me get back to the top here. It's Luis Gil going for the Yankees. Still, by and large, pitching pretty well. Despite, I still think pitching above his talent level overall. But the results have been there overall. Did have a 4 inning start against the White Sox that was disappointing in his most recent one. Gave up 4 runs in that one. What we have seen recently is some shorter starts out of heel. Might be managing his innings a little bit. Was out, missed all of last year if I'm remembering correctly, and had surgery in there somewhere. So probably just managing the innings a little bit. Don't want to pile it up because he is a key part of the rotation at this point, and going to need him for whatever playoff run the Yankees mount. So a little bit short start concerns, and just obviously a team that we don't like to target with the Guardians in town. He's got them at just a 3.65 implied total. They're so low strikeout. They're showing a little bit of power against. Obviously, that ballpark helps out the lefties in that lineup. So I don't love the spot for Luis Gil, despite the low total on the Guardian side. And then I think the Yanks are potentially underappreciated on the Vegas line there. 4.45 for this Yankees lineup against Matthew Boyd. Seems a little light. Boyd had a decent start in his first outing of the year. That was 5 1/3 innings against the Cubbies. Struck out 6, gave up just 1 earned run on 3 hits. We'll get back to that in a minute, but targetable lefty against all that power, I don't know. Kind of intrigued by the Yankee spot today, showing a little bit of power through the obvious guys. Reds at the Blue Jays, 4.12 implied total for the Reds. Are going up against those Barrios, decidedly average. On the other side, 4.47 implied total for the Blue Jays. They look pretty playable against Carson Spears, who has had a couple good starts through the season, or even more than that, more than a handful of solid starts, but a lot of very short outings through here too. So the DFS reliability kind of comes and goes with Carson Spears, and the Blue Jays, fairly low strikeout team, respectable total on the Vegas board. Seems like an avoidable spot, but it's one we'll talk about. He'll be low owned. The Orioles at the Mets. It's Jose Quintana going for the Mets. 4.23 implied total. Feels a little bit light on the Orioles side, but Quintana has had a number of very good starts this year. He's coming off back-to-back starts of that weren't quality starts. 4 earned runs on 7 hits over 4 innings to the Athletics in his last one. And then a mixed start. He went 6 2/3 against Seattle at Seattle. Gave up 5 earned on 4 hits, but filled it, went and pitched into the 7th. Struck out 8, walked 2. Mixed returns there. But he, again, has had some good starts against some good teams through the years. So I don't want to completely write off Quintana, but low 4s might be a little bit light for the Orioles side. And then is Dean Kramer on the mound pitching against the Mets. Mets showing a little bit of power on their end. 4.36 implied total. Seems like a playable stack. Phillies at the Braves. Ronaldo Lopez is returning to the mound. His first August start. It's been a little bit. He did make 1 rehab start on the 13th. Went 4 innings, faced 19 hitters, wasn't overly efficient or good, but don't really care about the quality of the rehab start. It's more about how many innings they get. I gave him 5. I think 5 is a reasonable expectation here. He's going up against the Phillies. The Phillies are pulling a 4.38 implied total, partially against him, partially against the bullpen. Greatly prefer the Phillies side, but I do think there's a case to be made that Ronaldo, for while he's in there, is going to be a little bit limiting to them. So they fall a little bit behind, let's say, the Yankees, the Mets, and some of the other teams that are above them on the board here, and then some of the biggies down here, obviously. The Braves on their side going up against Zach Wheeler. Don't like the looks of the Braves at all here. Wheeler really has had, 1, 2, 3 bad starts all year. A 7-run game that came 4 starts ago against the Yanks. An 8-run game that came against the Orioles at Baltimore all the way back on June 16th, and a 6-run game that was his worst of the year because it came against the Marlins over 4 innings back on May 12th. Other than that, he has not given up more than 4. I thought it was 3. He gave up 4 earned runs in a start against Pittsburgh on April 14th. So the 4 and then those 3 bad ones, and then every other start that he's made, he's kept teams to under 3 runs, and it was only 3 once. Yep, only 3 once. So every other start after those, below 2. So yeah, Zach Wheeler, pretty good. Not really a great target. The Braves are obviously a high strikeout, makes him look very, very good. 3.71 implied total on the Braves side. Brewers against the Cards, 7.5 run total for the game, 3.69 implied for the Brewers. It's Frankie Montas on the hill for the Brewers. It's Eric Fede going for the Cards. So 3.69 implied total for the Brewers, and then 3.89 for the Cards against Frankie Montas. Don't really love either pitcher. Don't really love either offense at those totals. So when it falls into a spot like that, I feel like you lean pitching a little bit more. We'll look at those guys, but I'm not a big fan of either one. So, I don't know. We'll kick that game around. That's going to be an interesting one to talk about. Tigers at the Cubbies. Javier Assad on the mound for Chicago. A lot of short outings in a row. Hasn't completed the 5th inning in 3 straight. You've got to go back to a game against Kansas City in which he went 6, gave up 3 runs on July 28th. 5 strikeout game there. Pretty diminishing returns throughout the second half of the season from Assad, from at least compared to where he was at the beginning of the year. The full season numbers look a lot better than he actually is, but he is putting up a 3.49 implied total on the Tigers side, and then Tigers are going with a Bo Brisky, and then I believe it's Brian Sammons in the bulk relief role. If it is Sammons, assuming it is, that's who I've got in the model right now, pushing some pretty beefy home run numbers toward the Cubs. They're not totaling out to a great mark. They're not in a huge implied total. It's just 4.10 runs on the Vegas board. But they are showing quite a bit of power. I'm 80.5 the home run pick of the day. Went with Seiya Suzuki for the home run pick from the Cubs in the overall list there. So a lot of guys over the magic number. It's an interesting team. A couple of banged up players in that lineup, so we'll see what they roll out there. But I kind of am interested in the Cubs, and especially if I can get away with them at low ownership, makes them a little bit interesting. Pirates against the Rangers, an 8-run total on the board there. It's Cody Bradford, who is not uninteresting himself against the Pirates. 3.79 implied total for Pittsburgh. Bradford not pitching poorly this season. Not outstanding results either. But I think on a board like this, he kind of lands okay. 4.30 implied total for the Rangers. They're facing Mitch Keller. I almost called him Mixed Keller because I was going to say his results are mixed through the year, which I think is totally fair. Coming off of 2 games in a row, 4 innings, 7 earned runs against the Dodgers, 5 innings, 8 earned runs against the Padres, both on the road. It's probably a little unfair to compare the Rangers to those 2 teams, just in terms of where the results, especially the Dodgers, where the results are. But in a man-for-man sense, as you go through that Rangers lineup, and somebody mentioned it in the Discord the other day. I said, that tough matchup for I forget who against the Rangers, and maybe it was Woody. I forget who our resident Rangers fan is. I think it was Woody. Came in and said, Rangers not so good this year. But in a man-for-man sense, that is a very good lineup, despite current year performance for a number of those guys. So it depends on how you want to look at it. I tend to look at it the latter way. So 4.30 implied total has me a little bit interested in Texas and a little bit less interested in Mitch, but he is more than capable of putting up a decent start against that lineup. Red Sox and the Astros, another interesting one here. We have Ronel Blanco for the Astros going up against a very good Red Sox lineup that is more complete now and is showing a decent amount of power through some of those key lefties, plus Tyler O'Neill. And then on the Astros side, they're drawing a mid-range total. It's 4.23 for the Red Sox. It's 4.37 for the Astros. They're going up against Nick Pivetta, who is one of the better strikeout pitchers on the slate, but really tough team for strikeouts. Really challenging opponent for Pivetta. So looks like a 4 corners game in that one, especially with both teams coming down with healthy mid-range totals that compete with most of the totals on this board. So I think it's easily a 4 corner spot, and I could realistically see any one of those 4 things being in a winning lineup today. So another part of a really challenging slate. Angels at the Royals. Very low total for the Angels side, 3.40 on the Los Angeles side. They're facing Cole Ragans, one of the top pitchers on both talent and just opportunity. Matchup, DFS spot. Should be very, very popular at a high price, but seems well worth it here. And then the Royals look pretty juicy going up against Tyler Anderson, a 4.70 implied total. That's one of the top 3 on the slate. I dropped Vinny Pasquantino's stats since the All-Star game that somebody tweeted out into the Discord earlier. Obviously, we like going to Vinny, and there are a bunch of good options in that Royals lineup. So I'm interested in exploring them, seeing how they click together with, a team like the Yankees, let's say. Team like the Dodgers, maybe. Giants certainly can fit together pretty well with the Royals. So there's a lot of different ways you can take that one. Rays and the Athletics. It's Shane Baz going for the Rays. Fair price for a matchup against the Athletics on both sites. He's got them under 4 runs, 3.94 implied total. He's been a little bit up and down, hasn't been great for limiting runs, but hasn't been a disaster. He's made some short starts, but also went 7 in his last one. 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, 2 home runs allowed. That was against Houston. Notably, they're better than the Athletics are, so it seems like a spot to maybe consider some Shane Baz. And then it said Joey Estes going for the A's. A little bit of opportunity there for him as well. He had a 8 strikeout game, a couple of 6 strikeout games through the season, but overall he's kind of a limited talent. But there are a lot of strikeouts in that struggling Tampa Bay lineup. Twins against the Padres, 4.13 implied total for Minnesota, 3.97 on the Padres side. It's Martin Perez, it's Bailey Ober. Ober coming off a bunch of sharp starts in a row. Didn't have a bad start in his last one, but he only struck out 3. He walked 3, 2 earned runs on 7 hits over 6 innings at Texas. Again, not a bad one, but maybe not exactly peak form either. But he's been on a pretty solid run of quality starts. Gives you very good shot at depth. Gives you a lot of opportunity to score some fantasy points. Just a bad matchup for him against the Pods. Martin Perez seems pretty targetable with the Twins lineup. 4.13 is a respectable spot there as far as this board goes. And there are a lot of bats that we like in that lineup. White Sox against the Giants. Robbie Ray completely melted down in his last one. It's funny, he's made 5 starts. And we've seen basically every different version of Robbie Ray. The last start, he came out, he lasted just 2/3 of an inning against the Braves. He gave up 5 earned, 1 hit allowed, struck out 2, walked 3, and gave up a home run. It's actually an impressive line. He actually hit the first 2 batters, walked, I think struck one of the, hit 2, struck 1 out, walked 1 to load the bases. Maybe found another strikeout, then gave up the grand slam, then gave up another run. Something along those lines. But it is total meltdown, total disaster. But a very talented pitcher. And obviously a pretty incredible matchup against the White Sox in this ballpark. 3.18 implied total for Chicago. And then it's Davis Martin on the mound. Not really a consideration for the White Sox. And the Giants pulling the heaviest total on the board against. Last game up, Bryce Miller, very high-end, capable pitcher, going up against the Dodgers. It's just not a good spot. We saw Brian Wu last night. Wasn't bad, but ended up giving up a couple of runs. Struck out, I think, 5. What did he go? 5 innings, 5 strikeouts? Or maybe it was 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, and a couple of runs. Wasn't a bad start, but the Dodgers are just limiting, and there's always going to be that looming threat over the top of it with kind of a capped upside. Bryce Miller's very good. The Dodgers lineup, especially in complete form with Freddie Freeman in the lineup, Max Muncy back, Tommy Edman back. It's just a really dangerous team. 4.69 implied total for Los Angeles against Bryce Miller should be kind of indicative of that. And then on the mound for Los Angeles, really looking to find his form for the first time all year, Walker Buehler. Tremendous opportunity against Seattle. He's very cheap. He is a talented guy, but he has not been really sharp since returning. And he hasn't been pitching deep into games, just 3 1/3 in his last outing. 4 runs, but only 1 of them earned. 3 hits, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. A pair of 2 strikeout games before that one, a 3 strikeout game. He had 2 7 strikeout games. 1 against Colorado, 1 against Cincinnati. Both of those were all right. The Colorado game, he gave up 3 earned runs. Cincinnati game was his best of the year. He shut them out over 6 innings. That's not an unrealistic expectation. That's also going back to May, by the way. This is just his second start back. So it's not unrealistic to think that if he could get 5 innings, he could give you a reasonable start for your money. I think that's where I've got him pegged. It was 5. I might even have cut him to 4.5. I just don't think that even against that opponent, you're really going to get the depth. So, challenging spot. This is what it looks like. He falls here. So for 7,000 on FanDuel, probably not a great investment, Walker Buehler. But for 75 on DraftKings, he might be able to give you that 5 innings. And against that Seattle team, he could find you a nice pile of strikeouts. The thing is, you've just got so many deep options on this slate in a similar price range that you probably don't need to do that to yourself. And that's one of the more somewhat, capped ones. Top of the pitching board, Zach Wheeler. Against that Braves team, there's a ton of strikeouts available for him. He's been spectacular throughout most of the season. You get a slightly more expensive on both sites. Cole Ragans going up against a weaker Angels lineup. Definitely similar opportunities. They project out very, very similarly. Pick your favorite, own them both. Pick whichever one is lower owned. Any different way you approach it, both of those guys, very, very good options, very much in play. Robbie Ray, I just don't trust at all. Never have, never will. We've talked about Robbie Ray since his return with that big, big downside that he's got for walks. Even in his good years, he was a high walk pitcher, but he wrangled it, significantly from his extremely bad days. But that's been a little bit of an issue for him so far in the return. He's just got a dynamite matchup against the White Sox for 97 and mostly 8,600 on the DraftKings slate. Plays pretty terrific. 10,000 for Bailey Ober is a little bit challenging going up against a very low strikeout, pretty decent Padres lineup. 8,400 is a different story. I think he's much more in play on DK today. Ronald Blanco I don't love against Boston, probably pretty skippable at 99 on FanDuel, but he won't be popular there, and he has been fairly good throughout the season. I just don't really, even at this point, still not really a believer. 88 on DraftKings, again, I think is more playable, but it's a little higher, obviously, than 84 for Ober, 86 for Robbie Ray against the White Sox. Shane Baz, Nick Pivetta, two very strong options on both sides for value. Baz, not the best for depth, but a tremendous matchup for strikeouts. A lot of upside for him against the Athletics, 81.76. Pretty strong price-wise, nice value. Pivetta just going up against that low strikeout, high-quality Astros lineup, but he's one of the better strikeout pitchers, one of the 30+% strikeout pitchers this season that are available on this slate. So he's in consideration, 86 and especially at 78 on DraftKings. Bradford, like I said, projects out pretty interesting. Hasn't been pitching poorly, isn't the best strikeout option in the world, but the Pirates will help him out in that department a little bit, I think. 8,300, 8,100 across sites makes a lot work for salary. Not uninteresting. Luis Hill, just don't like the matchup for him. I think this projection is very realistic with the low strikeout nature of the Guardians, 96, 9,000, the way he prices out against everybody above him here, and then even several of the options in this kind of a range below him. Luis Hill might be one of my least favorite pitchers on this slate at these prices. Mitch Keller, playable against Texas. Don't love it. Don't hate it. 8,800. 77 is more interesting on DraftKings. That's very playable in the same way that these guys are. That's not a bad spot. Jose Berrios I don't like all that much, especially not at 93 on FanDuel. 8,000 is a lot more reasonable on DraftKings. Depends on which lineup the Reds roll out there. Sometimes there are strikeouts, sometimes there's fewer. But Berrios has the talent to find a few, pay off a mid-range salary on DK. Really don't like him on FanDuel at 93. Tyler Anderson feels like a pretty hard no, despite landing in kind of the middle of the board there. With the Royals drawing one of the highest totals on the slate, we'll give him a look, but at 9,000 to target the Royals feels like a no thank you. 82, I guess, puts him a little bit more into the mix on DraftKings, but it's another just why would you kind of a spot. Just like Luis Hill, like why would you target the Guardians on such a deep slate? Why would you target the Royals with Tyler Anderson on such a deep slate? Buehler again is going to be a challenge. I feel like it's one of those cases where a good day lands Walker Buehler right around those medians, without much ceiling beyond that. He could pick off those scores in 5 innings against that Mariners team. Needs to have a good day to do it, and we haven't really seen that much from him this season overall, or the first game back since the return wasn't great. So I don't love it. I don't think there's much depth there, and you're not getting anything beyond those numbers. So it's probably another spot that's a little bit skippable, despite a really good opponent and a nice name brand for the money. Eric Fede against the Brewers, 84.79. I've never really been a strong fan, but he's fine in the mid-range there. You can take a few shares. Dean Kramer's kind of the same thing, 8,273 against a pretty good Mets lineup. I would much rather have the Mets. It's the same thing for Rosie Quintana in the next spot. I think they're both playable on either side of that game, but I would probably rather have the offense from either side of that game. Miller against the Dodgers, 89.83. Not really discounted for the matchup on FanDuel, but I think he is on DraftKings. At least puts him in the mid-range with guys like Cody Bradford. Tough matchup, but he's going to be really low-owned for his talent. Montas at 79, 7,000, kind of a no. I don't think there's much there. Ronaldo, I just think we're getting a short outing against Philly. 8,500 doesn't feel really appropriate for a matchup against Philly anyway, so feels pretty skippable in that spot. Joey Estes is interesting against Tampa Bay. There is some bonus strikeout opportunity for him from where he normally is. 71.63. I think he's our first realistic, super bargain bin type target. I've got Assad against the Tigers. We'll see. I don't think, again, that the innings are going to be there. 7,400, 6,900. Where's Assad? If we can get 6, I mean, we're fine. It's just the numerous short starts are really concerning. He's only finished the 6th inning that one time against Kansas City since. The time before that he finished the 6th was all the way back to May 15th. A lot of really short outings in there. Seems pretty rough, even with the opponent and the low price. Davis Martin's pretty hard no against the Giants. Carson Spears against Toronto. Maybe we could talk about it at those prices. That is pretty cheap. Martin Perez on DraftKings, maybe. On FanDuel, really hard no at 87. I don't really understand how they arrived at that price. 75 for Matthew Boyd, 66. Pretty hard no on both sides against the Yanks. And then Salmons is a bulk reliever. Guardians lineup. Reload labs here, see if we got any of these lineups in. Nice. We do have both lineups for the first game. So the Guardians are in town to face the Yankees. Should be a good series. We get a reasonably good version of the Guardians lineup, reasonably good version of the Yankees lineup. Matthew Boyd as a starting point, 6,600, 7,500. I was just saying, I don't really think that he's overly playable in this spot. Can't really look at these. This is the one game, 5 1/3. It was a good outing, like I said. 24 1/3, 24.1% strikeout rate over 71 innings in 15 starts last year. A 5.45 ERA and a 4.37 xFIP. Allowed a 3.63% home run rate despite limiting hard hits very effectively, limiting exit velo okay. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher, and he does make mistakes, gives up barrels. And when he does that, they tend to travel. And against a team like this, especially these three guys, who you can probably guess who those three guys are, it's a little bit of a sticky spot here for Matthew Boyd. So I don't love the power downside. I do think he's got a little strikeout potential here. Yanks, this version of the lineup strikes out 22.4% of the time. That's neither, crazy high nor crazy low. If you absolutely need a sneaky value dart on DraftKings at 66 as an SP2 in very, very limited shares, probably not at all in 20 lineups, but in a handful of lineups in 150, you could throw that and just try and buy the strikeout upside. But I really think you're playing with fire if you do that. In that first start back, I mentioned it before, but let me get back to it. 5 1/3, faced 19 hitters against the Cubs. He struck out 6. He allowed 1 earned run on 3 hits. It's a underperforming Cubs team that is still, moderately comparable to this Yankees squad, except for the 2 ultra premium hitters in this lineup. The Cubs don't have anybody like Soto and Judge, but they've got a lot of hitters like everybody else in this lineup. So, 5 1/3, if he can give you 5 and change, get up to 6 innings, maybe he can pay off with strikeouts at 66. I really don't like it on a deep pitching slate at 75 on FanDuel. Luis Hill for 9,000, 9,600. I just don't love throwing him against that 19.9% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the lineup. That's juiced by a 31.4 for Joneski Noel over 102 plate appearances, 31.4 for Daniel Schneemann over 159, and then Bo Naylor at 31.8 is a fixture in the lineup. But that's driven up a little bit by those three. When we look at the lineup and what's really in it, most of the everyday guys, most of their key hitters, this is elite level of limiting strikeouts. Andres Jimenez, their worst regular, 14%. 19% for Brian Rocchio, who's really only here to play defense. Even that is a little bit better than the average. And then these ones are just spectacular up at the top. So it's a really, really challenging matchup. Hill is at 27.9% strikeouts for the season on an 11.6% swing. He's got good numbers, 3.25 ERA, but a 4.17 xFIP. He's continuing to pitch about a run better than he actually is. 11.9% walks are the Achilles heel, too. That's what's really going to eventually burn him. 8.4% barrels when he makes mistakes. It's on a pretty significant fly ball trajectory, so he's vulnerable to home runs. Hasn't been terrible for him through the season, and does have a good rating by Stuff Plus. Just don't like targeting the Guardians on a deep pitching slate, especially when you get no discount. He's one of the more expensive pitchers on the entire slate. So really don't like the Louis Seal spot. What's up, 8 Game? Pink hand wave back to you, buddy. Steven Leibowitz is here. Hola. Michael Knack likes a sod with the wind blowing in. Okay, like that. What is the wind? I didn't look at the wind today. Weather overall fine around the nation. It's the only thing that Roth had was the only thing he had was wind in from left center at 10 miles an hour on a coolish night. Bumped to pitching for the Chicago game. We'll see about that. I don't know that I fully buy that one. 10 miles an hour is kind of a nothing wind. Or like by the same token, you could be like all excited about the Yankees game because the wind is blowing out to right field at 10 miles an hour. I don't know. I think we can dramatically overhype the wind sometimes. And we've seen it time and again not really be that big a factor. That is one of the more important ballparks to talk about it in, of course. But it only goes so far. It's not like it's a 20-mile-an-hour headwind. So, again, with this game, definitely interested in the Yankees' bats, especially with those three big hitters in the middle there showing all kinds of power. Soto, 14.8 in the home run model. Aaron Judge, one of the slate leaders at 17.64. Giancarlo Stanton, not far behind, 12.51. Those guys have accounted for, 98 combined home runs for the three hitters. And Stanton missed a quarter of the season. 300 ISO for Soto, 372 for Judge, 235 for Stanton. Everybody skips Giancarlo Stanton. He's never the most popular hitter in this lineup. And 4,800, 3,000 with his power upside, he should not be as unpopular as he is. He's having a strong year for power. He did miss those games. It's what happens with Giancarlo Stanton. But when he's in the lineup, especially at these prices, 20 home runs in 337 plate appearances, 235 ISO, an 18.1% barrel, a 52.4% hard hit, facing Matthew Boyd, a mediocre at best lefty, who has home run issues sometimes. Mamba's fading the Yankees the rest of the season. Don't think they're relevant anymore. It's an interesting approach. Gleyber Torres off the top at 3,800, 2,700. Easy to play. Very, very cheap at second base. 311 on base needs to be better, but it's one of the elite spots in all of baseball hitting in front of Soto and Judge. So if you can just focus on getting on base, maybe it helps them out in the long term. Maybe the WRC Plus and the on base rise in tandem with one another. All you need is Gleyber Torres to be cheap at second base in that spot in the lineup, and you take what you get from him production-wise ahead of those three elite power hitters. Alex Verdugo, 3,800, 2,700, 10 home runs on the season, a 130 ISO. He's very meh. Jose Trevino, I prefer Austin Wells, but Trevino's a fantastic defensive catcher. He's also hit eight home runs with a 168 ISO, created runs 1% better than average. Mix and match quality player for a cheap price at the absolute best. Anthony Volpe, not having a very strong season, 11 home runs and 20 steals, but 247, 297, 383. 8% worse than average creating runs, not really hitting the ball hard, striking out at a 22.3% clip and not really drawing that many walks. Not that much appeal, but there's counting stat any given slate if you need a cheap shortstop from this lineup, kind of an opportunity for Volpe. And again, facing a fairly weak lefty. DJ LeMahieu, skippable enough. 194, 270, 256, a 52 WRC plus fits into what Mamba was saying about irrelevant players from this team. The bottom of the lineup, though, Oswald Peraza, very interesting to me. Talked about him the other day, and he came out and hit a home run at mid price, which I like to see. Was pretty low owned for that one. Comes back today, third base and shortstop on DraftKings, 3,000, 2,200, three-position eligible on FanDuel. Makes a lot of things work with this Yankees lineup, getting to their best hitters and then still buying a expensive second stack, expensive pitching. So really interested in Oswald Peraza at the bottom of the lineup. He is a significantly better hitter than Oswaldo Cabrera, so don't make the mistake of thinking that that's the same guy because they have similar names. That is a very high-end prospect, like I said the other day, At one point, it was which guy's going to reach the major leagues and stick first, Volpe or Peraza. Not that Volpe's been great, but Peraza's that kind of a level of talent. So getting him very cheap to, again, make things work, wrap him around to the top of the lineup here. You could easily put him at second base, skip Glaber, and then go the 3 outfielders on FanDuel. Get them both on DraftKings. Third base is fine for Peraza. Third base, second base, 3 outfielders right there. And then go to a high-end shortstop. Not a bad option on DK. On the Guardian side, I do think they're playable against Heel, but they're coming in at a much lower implied total. They were, 364, 365? So that's a low total for a high-quality baseball team. I do think you can get away with rostering them, especially with all the lefty power in this lineup. Even Steven Kwan has 13 home runs this year, 151 ISO. Doesn't hit the ball hard, but a lefty who can take some pokes with all of his back control can just decide, hey, I'm going to try and take a shot this plate appearance at those right field seats. So definitely an opportunity for Steven Kwan, but what we actually like about him is the ridiculous ability to set the table for the power hitters that follow. 316, 374, 467, creating runs 40% better than average. He's terrific off the top, and he's not expensive at 46.31. At certain points this season, he was priced up a lot higher than that. This is a nice price to find Steven Kwan. Jose Ramirez going to take pokes from the left side. 64.42, very expensive, but a superstar. 32 home runs, 29 stolen bases, a 262 ISO, a 139 WRC+. I'm pretty sure Jose Ramirez can deposit 1 or 2 into the right field seats against this pitcher. Josh Naylor, very similar power upside. Very low strikeout, 17.1%. He's got an 8.9% barrel, 43.4% hard hits. He's hit 27 long balls, 233 ISO, 122 WRC+. Tremendous option. Will Brennan, mix and match quality outfielder, but he's left-handed and he's very cheap in the cleanup spot, 29-24 across sites. 8 home runs in 280 plate appearances, and another guy just, take shots at right field. I keep pointing as if right field in Yankee Stadium is right over here in my house. It's not, but in my seats, that's kind of where right field is. Janeski Noel, interesting option with all the power that we've seen from him. 102 plate appearances. He's already hit 9 home runs. He has a 326 ISO so far. I expect that pace will cool. He's a high strikeout, low walk hitter. But when he's made contact, he's absolutely destroyed the ball. 16.4% barrels so far. Definitely a mix and match option at worst. And he's very cheap. Andres Jimenez, it kind of declines from there. Jimenez is just low strikeout, put the ball in play, but he's only at 255, 302, 334. He's been 19% worse than average for run creation this season. And then you get to Daniel Schneemann, Bo Naylor, Brian Rocio. Naylor is a low-quality catcher at this point, 9 home runs on the season, but right at the Mendoza, 261 on base, a 71 WRC+. Not really picking off a lot of power when you go to him for a very cheap price. 31.8%. He's more likely to put zeros in your lineup than anything else. But again, another lefty with a moderate ability to hit home runs. Schneemann, 25-23, multi-position eligible on both sides, but hasn't done much on the year. Out of the guys at the bottom, his 92 WRC plus stands out as the highest, over 159 plate appearances. But I think we know what quality that is. And then Rocio, again, just kind of here to play defense. For me, this goes Yankees, bats. And then I guess I got to give it to Luis Gil, but I really don't like it. So it's really the appealing thing here is Yankees, bats. And then maybe you mix in some Guardians. That would probably be my true number 2, given how Gil is priced against the Guardians. It's probably just bats on both sides, Yankees above the Guardians. And then if you want to take one of the pitchers, the preference is Gil, but I do think that's loosely playable if you want to chase some very dangerous, cheap strikeouts. Like in some universes, there's a little treasure chest full of strikeouts and fantasy points, but it's way out on the ice, and the ice is really, really thin and thins out as you get out toward that treasure chest. You might just go plummeting through it with Matthew Boyd on this one, but he is very cheap. Blue Jays, see if we got that lineup. We do not. Nope. So, Jose Murillos on a deep slate on DraftKings is definitely playable from the mid-range at 8,000. 93 on FanDuel feels a little bit expensive. He's going up against a version of the Reds lineup that has just a 21.9% strikeout rate. That's bolstered a little bit by Santiago Espinal at the bottom at 11.7. But some of their more realistic guys like Tyler Stevenson, very good power hitting catcher at just 19.5. TJ Friedl at 18.2. Some of the other guys in the low 20s to offset the high 30s from their superstar Ellie De La Cruz and from Noelvi Marte, whatever he's going to be. So I don't really understand where FanDuel arrived at 9,300 for a pitcher with an 18.8% strikeout rate, a 3.85 ERA, and a 4.49 xFIP, 8.3% swinging strikes, 27.4% CSW, giving up 4+% home runs this season. We've talked since the beginning of the year, and honestly since last year and going back to the Awesemo days, about how I think Jose Barrios is just a mediocre pitcher in disguise, or like an average, not mediocre, average. Mediocre implies a little bit worse. Average pitcher in disguise. And I think that's really what he is. I mean, this is below average strikeout rate. It's a very average ERA. The xFIP is higher than the ERA is. The swinging strikes are below average, so is the CSW. The power is bad. This is a what I think is an average pitcher putting up below average performance this season. This is a substandard season for Jose Barrios. So, really, I think he's targetable with Reds bats, and I don't think you go here on FanDuel. 8,000 is a totally different story on the DraftKings slate. Throw him into the mix, get a little bit of him. He's probably not going to be crazy popular here. So I think he's highly playable on that spot. But the Reds coming in at 4.12 implied runs, I'm more inclined to go toward that Reds lineup. You can see some decent home run totals for the obvious guys through the middle. A clearly targetable amount of premium contact and fly balls that Barrios is giving up. Again, 8.1% barrels, 89.7. This is just under. We're talking about 0.3 of a mile per hour. I can't do that math in my head, what that would be in distance. 42.3% hard hits is way over the threshold of 40% that we're typically looking for. Stuff Plus doesn't like Barrios either. A lot of reason to consider some Reds bats, and how popular are they? Jays landed. Still not on Labs. I've just been trying to avoid having to sit here and like type it in, because as slowly as we go through things, that is an easy way to waste time. But that sounds like an interesting version. Let's see. Oh, weird. That came out a while ago. Why the hell is Labs not having it? That's annoying. Came out like an hour ago. That's weird. Why did I not have it? I thought I grabbed all the ones that were out already. Spring of our show, Vladdy, Will Wagner cleanup, Alejandro Kirk, Harwitz, Loperfido, Leo Jimenez, and Addison Barger. So it's a little bit different than this. All right, let's just do it real quick. Spring of our show, Guerrero, Kirk. So those two guys just switch. And then it's Loperfido there. No Clement. All right. There's your correct Toronto Blue Jays lineup. They're going to be facing Carson Spears, who checks in at 64 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel. He's got a 4.55 ERA, but a little bit more respectable 4.19 xFIP. Doesn't really walk too many. 5.3% walk rate is pretty good, but doesn't really strike out too many. Average is kind of 21.7%. Strikeout rate over 65 and a third, 8 starts. Hasn't really been struggling with power too much. 7.4% barrels, 35.6% hard hits, and 87.9 miles an hour of exit velo. Most notably, the weak and medium contact is significant. He's been pretty good at that. 3.20% home runs probably represents a few mistakes in a fairly small sample. 86 rating by Stuff Plus isn't exactly ideal. They don't love the full arsenal here, but he's gotten away with it to a decent degree. Where are we on recent outings? Just 2 2/3 in the last one. 6 hits, 4 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. Short outing. Not sure what happened there. 5 innings in the start before that, gave up 8, struck out 7, but walked 4, 2 home runs allowed against Milwaukee at Milwaukee. 5 2/3 against the Giants, struck out 5, 3 earned runs allowed. 5 clean innings against the Cubs, no runs, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts. Had a 9 strikeout game, that's his season high. That came against Miami, but he allowed 3 earned runs over 5 innings. Had a stretch of 3 6-inning starts going all the way back to early mid-June. 3 6-inning starts, 2 of them were quality starts. 5 strikeouts in 2 of them and 4 strikeouts in another one. It's not exactly high end. And the Blue Jays, this version, 23.6% strikeout rate in this lineup. Over here, you could probably do it at 64. Over here, you're probably not getting the quality start for your money. Really, he's done that, again, twice all season and not since late June. Seems kind of thin. If you're just looking to buy 5 innings and 4 strikeouts, maybe a win bonus, maybe. But over here, I think it's a different kind of a dart. Value bin kind of a guy. The Reds lineup, starting from the top, Jonathan India with his 355 on base, his ability to create correlated scoring events, 108 WRC+, adds a little bit of counting stat upside, 11 home runs, 10 stolen bases on the season, and he's cheap. Second base, 4,500, 3,000, similar to Gleyber Torres off the top of the Yankees lineup, with a much better ability to get on base. Would have been interesting if the Yankees had actually pulled the trigger on a rumored Jonathan India interest that they had at the trade deadline, because India actually would be ideal to hit ahead of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. In this situation, hitting ahead of Elly De La Cruz, not a bad spot either, though. 21 home runs, 59 stolen bases for Elly. He gets on at a great 341 clip. He creates a lot of runs, too. 22% better than average to lead this lineup. 223 ISO, 13% barrels. Elly's pretty spectacular, even including the strikeouts. Don't really care. He's drawing a 10.1% walk rate and getting on base like crazy, so don't really care that 31% of his plate appearances end in strikeouts. He'd be getting out one way or another in those spots anyway. Tyler Stevenson, 4,200, 3,000. Very, very cheap for a catcher who hits the ball as hard as he does. 16 home runs, a 206 ISO over 380 plate appearances. 10.1% barrels, 44.9% hard hits. That is very cheap to throw at this kind of contact and this pitcher. Starting to warm to the idea of some Reds. Might take a look at what they can buy, because they're not super cheap, particularly on FanDuel, but they're also not crazy expensive. They're solidly in the middle. TJ Friedl for 43. Cheap on DraftKings. 31 on FanDuel. 10 home runs on the season, 6 stolen bases, a 191 ISO, 105 WRC+, and fewer than 200 plate appearances. Not a bad option. Fairly low strikeout. Ability to get involved in multiple ways with counting stats. Spencer Steer still has that second base eligibility for 32 that I love on the FanDuel slate. Interesting back and forth option there. You can also obviously have Steer in the outfield or first base on both sides. 53, 32, 18 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 191 ISO also for him. Positive run creator. Ty France, mix and match quality option at first base. He's very cheap. 2,500 there, 2,800 on DraftKings. He's got 11 home runs on the season, a 144 ISO, up to a 101 WRC+. Has been better over time. 2 years ago was his best season. He had 20 home runs that year, slashing 276, 340, 437, 162 ISO, and a 127 WRC+. Came back to earth a little bit last year, but was still a better run creator. Had 12 home runs in 665 chances. Hit for a little better average, got on base at a better clip. But not completely dissimilar from this season now. He's all right. He's just cheap. Jake Fraley, 35, 27, kind of just another outfielder type. Contact hitter, 274, 324, 370. 10 points below average for run creation, but a little bit of ability for stolen bases if he gets on. Not a great spot in the lineup to find a hitter like that. Novi Marte at 31, 26 has been really bad over 152 plate appearances. Came up as a high-end prospect, but then who knows how much of that was PEDs. Santiago Espinal, just a slap-hitting, low strikeout option. 8 home runs, 8 steals. You can mix and match your way to a couple shares if you're building a ton of Reds lineup, but he's low priority. On the Blue Jays side, George Springer, bad season, 220, 300, 366, 9% below average. If you're going to the Blue Jays against Carson Spears, though, you're probably including George Springer in that. Still low strikeout, reasonable walk rate, makes okay contact, right around, a little average-ish kind of contact, but still high-end any given slate upside. You could do worse than George Springer for these prices. Dalton Varsho, not a great hitter. 3,900, 2,800, not high price. 15 home runs, 10 stolen bases. I have less faith in Dalton Varsho and will continue to than I have in George Springer. I've seen a lot more from George Springer in his time than I've seen from Varsho in his. There's obviously a little bit more output in terms of extra base hits in that 193 ISO versus Springer's 146. But if I'm deciding between the two at basically same price on FanDuel, a little bit different on DraftKings, I tend to favor Springer. 56.38 remains cheap for Vladdy on DraftKings, appropriate on FanDuel, but arguably 200 cheap. 26 home runs at 235 ISO, a 165 WRC plus against a very gettable pitcher. Monster premium contact numbers for Vladdy. You get Will Wagner behind him at second base for 25 on the DraftKings slate, 26 at first base on FanDuel. You can put them together. You get Vladdy at third, him at first, and still have your util spot. Depends on how you want to put things together. Wagner, major contact over his 20 plate appearances so far. Hasn't hit a homer yet, but obviously he's crushed the ball a few times in batted ball events. We'll see what the power output ends up looking like, but a playable option hitting cleanup today. Alejandro Kirk, 3,400, 2,500. Not a high-end catcher option. 81 WRC plus, a .082 ISO. Doesn't really hit for much power. Doesn't really hit for much at all. Spencer Harwitz, definitely a very good on-base option with his 350 on-base percentage. Lefty bat going up against Carson Spears. I'd honestly have Harwitz in the leadoff spot the rest of the way. I really don't understand why they wouldn't do that. 114 WRC plus for him so far. He's hit 6 home runs, but he's really contact and on-base focused. Loper Fido has more power than he's shown. 3 home runs and a 116 ISO, over 169 chances out of the lefty bat. There's more upside than that. He was one of the Astros' more highly rated prospects to begin this season. Hit a bunch of home runs in a hurry back in April and got called up and has just been kind of languishing in the show, not getting many opportunities. High strikeout for sure, low walks for sure, more likely to give you a 0, but at very low ownership, very low cost. If you build a bunch of Blue Jay stacks, you could throw them into a few and you'd be doing all right. Leo Jimenez and Addison Barger at the bottom of the lineup. 5 home runs combined over 225 plate appearances. 93 and a 46 WRC plus respectively, 140s in terms of ISO. Mix and match infielders, multi-position guys on both sides. You can get there, but it's a little bit thinned down toward the bottom of the lineup. This goes... reluctantly, Blue Jays bats ahead of the Reds bats. I think that's more of a tie. But I dislike Jose Barrios a bit more, I guess, than the odds makers. To me, that feels more like a tie. To the model, it looks more like a tie, especially with the Reds showing more power. Reds obviously showing better fantasy projections. I'm going Reds. I think that's probably where I had it on the stacks board. I can't remember. Even with that higher implied total, Reds, then Blue Jays. For me, it's neither pitcher, but you could throw some of that on DraftKings at 64. Wouldn't do it on FanDuel. I don't think you get the depth. At 64, know that you're probably limited to 5 innings. He has been very light on depth this season. Barrios, again, playable here, but I think he's pretty low end. I think he's more likely to give you, even if it's not a disaster, a 4-run game where he allows a home run, a couple of strikeouts. I don't really see a lot of slate winners out of Jose Barrios here. Orioles and the Mets. Do we have the O's lineup too? Dean Kramer, it's Jose Quintana. So like I was saying about Quintana at the top of the show, has had some interesting starts against some good teams this year. It's undeniable. 4.26 ERA, but a 4.64 xFIP. Nobody's saying he's good. But I think on the right day, if you catch him for 72, he's one of the more capable value kind of guys. He's slightly above the extreme bargain bin, but 72 is a very good price on DraftKings. Even 78 on FanDuel, if you're building a ton of lineups and you're inclined to take shots on cheap pitchers, he's definitely capable of giving you 7 innings if things are going well. So that's not an unfair price. That's not an unfair... more often than not, he's going to land around that median, obviously. But he's got a little upside beyond that. Again, he hasn't had a good start in his last 2. 4 earned runs over just 4 innings against Oakland. 7 hits, 4 walks. There's a lot of downside for inefficiency with Quintana. Catch him on the wrong day, he's low strikeout, high walk. For the season, 18.6% Ks, 9% walks. You could easily throw at me in the chat, maybe you are right now, I don't have it up on the screen, that Jose Quintana's numbers look a lot like Jose Barrios' numbers, and that's totally fair. You could also argue that Jose Barrios is a little bit better than Jose Quintana. It's probably a worse matchup for Jose Quintana, but he's cheaper. He's going to definitely be low owned. Over 6 innings against a pretty good Twins team that is somewhat comparable to this Orioles team. 4 starts back. Struck out 5, walked 1, just 1 earned run on 5 hits. Start before that at Yankee Stadium, he struck out 6. Would have had a better day if he hadn't walked 5. He only gave up 1 earned run and 3 hits. The earned run came on a solo homer. But would have gone 6 easily had he not walked 5 hitters and still had a 6 strikeout game in a pretty effective day. 5 2/3 of 5-run ball against Colorado in a disappointing start, but the start before that one, he had 2 consecutive starts going back to the beginning of July. Both came against the Nationals where he went 7 innings. One of them was just a 1 strikeout game. The other was a 5 strikeout game. He gave up 4 hits, no earned runs in the 1 strikeout game, 1 hit, no earned runs in the 5 strikeout game. The Nationals are nowhere near as good as the Orioles are. But again, there is demonstrable ability to go 7 innings, which is important, and have a okay day for strikeouts in that sample. 5, 6 strikeouts over 7. It's just a matter of, can we be efficient with the walks? Can we avoid the long ball against a very, very good young Orioles team? But I think he's more on the board than Jose Barrios, oddly. Or at least similarly on the board. Give me that much. Dean Kramer at 73.82 has a 21.4% strikeout rate and 9.7% walk rate. If I'm saying that Jose Quintana on this side is on the board for those prices, I have to at least give that much to Dean Kramer at a higher projection. Slightly higher pricing, but similar numbers. 4.48 ERA, a 4.54 xFIP. 3.83 is pushing it on the home run mark, but it doesn't really come on terrible hard hits or exit velo numbers. These are both pretty good. 10.4% barrels, so this is more representative of some mistakes. It's an extended sample. It's 17 starts, only 90 1/3 innings. 6 innings in his most recent game on the 14th, faced the Nationals, gave up just 1 earned run on 5 hits, struck out 3 and walked 2. If you give me that start for the money today, or like that level for the money today, I'll take an additional strikeout. I'll say it was 4 strikeout. It would be a 4 strikeout game, and he's got the ability to go 1 or 2 earned runs over 6 against the Mets and give you a quality start. So on the board, but only loosely so. Deep pitching slate. Greatly prefer the bats on either side. For the Orioles, it's probably going to be Austin Slater at the top again. Do we have it on Underdog? Come on, Labs, get your shit together. Guardians, Reds, Mets, Yanks, Braves, Nationals, Blue Jays, Diamondbacks. Doesn't look like we've got this one yet. Probably going to be Austin Slater back up there, though, especially against a medium lefty. 25-25 across sites in the outfield. Easy way to get an Orioles stack started and easy way to keep it cheap. That said, there are a lot of pricing favors being done with this Orioles team right now. Probably, it's both sides, really. Outside of Gunnar, everybody is discounted. Even Santander, 5,300 is too cheap. It should be at least 55, 38 on FanDuel. And my honest opinion is it should be more like 58 and 4,000. Santander's hit 36 home runs this year. 285 ISO, 132 WRC+, 11.7% barrels, and 41.7% hard hits. And none of this is all that surprising. He had 28 home runs last year. He had 33 home runs the year before. He's ahead of those seasons' pace by a significant margin. This is his best season. But this is a guy who's been a premium power bat over the last few seasons. So why not go to him at a low price in his best season? Love the option. Switch hitter. As we looked at, gets more power from the left side against a righty pitcher, but has plenty against the lefty pitcher as well. So no issues going to him in the platoon split. Gunnar at 61.44 is the only appropriately priced guy. He's got 33 home runs, 14 steals, a 272 ISO, a 162 WRC+. He is a dynamite way to fill shortstop. Obviously comes in at a very high price, but everybody else in this stack, unless you're using him as a one-off, That's probably the least efficient way to use Gunnar because of how expensive he is. If you put them together and just consider the stack price, as we've done a bunch of times this season, take the 5-man off the top. Fills my outfield, gives me a shortstop and a first baseman. Includes Santander, Gunnar, Ryan Mountcastle, and Eloy Jimenez, as well as Austin Slater against the bad lefty. And my average price for that stack, that includes, again, their two best hitters, is $42.60. So that's what I mean when I say I don't care that Gunnar is expensive. The only bad way to use him is probably as a one-off. And he's still, obviously, elite as a shortstop one-off. It's just, where did you save money to get there? But as a stack, the Orioles are ridiculous value. On FanDuel, it's the same thing. 3,400. It's not the same thing. That's a much higher price on FanDuel relative to the cap than that DraftKings 5-man number was. If you make a slightly different decision and let's say we skip Santander, which I wouldn't want to do, but let's say you do, it would be the less popular path to take, certainly. And you go 25 for Slater, 44 for Gunnar, 31 for Mountcastle, and 27 to get to Eloy Jimenez. You're at 31.75. It's a little bit of savings. I still prefer the 4-man off the top. But point being, the Orioles get very, very cheap, very, very fast. Mountcastle for 4,3,100. That's 13 home runs, a 161 ISO, 108 WRC plus. He's a 270, 309, 431 hitter with more ability shown over last season and a lot more power than he's put on display in terms of the output. 13 homers and a 161 ISO doesn't exactly match his 9% barrels, 44.6% hard hits, and you can see the elite contact numbers that he's put up over the last 2 seasons. Mountcastle's better than he's been, but he's very cheap. He's better than these prices for sure. Eloy Jimenez at 34.27. This guy's got superstar caliber talent. He's not really had it for most of this year. He's a 101 ISO and he only has 5 home runs in 289 chances. But he's making, again, elite contact. 9% barrels, 50.5% hard hits. There's nothing about this that matches that or that ISO. 88 WRC plus. Spent most of the year either injured or with the White Sox, so you can forgive some lousy numbers, some lack of enthusiasm. He's very, very, very cheap for his talent and projected spot in this lineup. Colton Cowser comes back at a fairly high price at $5,000, but he's earned it. 18 home runs, a 197 ISO, 117 WRC plus, 29% strikeouts. He's not the most consistent hitter, but he murders the ball when he makes contact. 13.7% barrels and 46.9% hard hits this season. 3,100 on FanDuel remains pretty cheap. That's cheaper than $5,000 on DraftKings. Ramon Urias at 29.25, a mix and match caliber player with a little bit of power upside from the right side to throw to Jose Quintana late in the lineup. If he's in there, he can definitely make it into an Orioles stack or two if you're building a bunch of them. We've looked at his power over the past couple of seasons. Had for a late lineup, cheap, low-owned hitter, he's a guy who can deliver a home run from time to time. So he's one of the better options from late in the lineup for a cheap price. And he offers 3-position eligibility on FanDuel. Third base, not ideal on DraftKings, but it's also not tragic. I'd rather have him there than, say, shortstop. Jackson Holliday at 3,700 at second base, 3,000 second base and shortstop on FanDuel. 5 home runs. Take the good with the bad, 190, 236, 370, obviously still trying to find his footing overall, but definitely has had a surge since getting recalled and looks like a fixture from here going forward. James McCann, playable catcher, especially against the lefty. That said, those days are long since, the robust days of James McCann against lefties. 3 home runs on the season, a .097 ISO, and 180 plate appearances, so mix and match caliber catcher at best. For the Mets, DraftKings obviously hasn't been watching the show the last couple of, months, I guess. 4,600 from Mark Vientos is still stupid cheap. 19 home runs, a 270 ISO, a 147 WRC+. I was haranguing them about this yesterday, and I'm just going to continue doing it. Just look at the barrel. Leads the team in barrel rate. Close enough in hard hit rate. Just, perfectly aligned with Nimmo and Lindor and Alonso and JD Martinez. The kid is obviously a super high-end power bat. And he's also over 306 plate appearances now, slashing 277, 337, 547. That's a really good slash line. It's insane that Mark Vientos is this cheap. Look where he lands by comparison to all the other guys on this team. He's having a significantly better year than Nimmo, and Nimmo's 200 more. I don't understand that. Do we really think that these numbers would completely even out if we gave Vientos another 200 plate appearances? I think Vientos would just look significantly better. He's exceeding Nimmo's numbers in 200 fewer plate appearances. I don't think it would come crumbling down if you gave him those extra 200. I think he'd just be elite. Crazy that he's so cheap. 3,200 on FanDuel is also very, very cheap, especially if you give him third and first base. Francisco Lindor off the top, shortstop eligible on both sites, obviously 57-39, 24 homers, 25 steals, a 128 WRC plus, a 204 ISO. Just a tremendous superstar option, and he always comes at a slight discount for both price and popularity. Mets look like a pretty good option here. Nimmo at 48-33, 18 home runs, 11 steals, a 185 ISO, 119 WRC plus. Diminished in some ways, but improved in others. You know, the barrels are up, the hard hits are right about where they're supposed to be. Strikeouts are up, but so are the walks. Power's up a little bit. Nimmo's always going to be a good option for a fair price from the middle of the board. JD Martinez, 13th home run last night, 256, 343, 438, a 182 WRC plus, a ISO 182, 124 WRC plus. Major premium contact option like he's always been. Excellent source of power upside. Just a 7.26 in the home run model, and Nimmo's at 7.33 with 3 hitters surrounding them over the magic number. So it depends on what site you're playing on. It depends on how much you want to spend on your stack. The Mets are not, I was going to say they're not cheap, but they're not crazy expensive either. That 5-man is $4,800. That's not bad for that level of talent. Includes Vientos, Lindor, JD Martinez, and Pete Alonso with Nimmo. Not bad for the top 5 from the Mets. And then depending on what you do here, that 4-man is very cheap at 32. I would want Lindor in it. I would probably go 1, 2, 3, and then either way, I'll take the more expensive Nimmo for the average, 3,400 average. So compares with the top 4 from here. Alonso at 5,033 has 27 home runs, a 229 ISO, premium power bat at first base, and honestly, cheap for his talent. You could say it's about right for the output we've gotten from Alonso this year. He's been slightly off the mark. I talked about it yesterday. We're down a little bit in barrels. We're very similar to where he was 2 years ago. There's more there, though. I mean, any given slate upside with Pete Alonso is significant and nearly as high as anyone in baseball. Major, major power bat. Jesse Winker, 38-29, is pretty cheap. He's got 11 home runs, 14 steals, 121 WRC plus for the season. Large chunk of that came all with Washington, but a very capable left-handed bat later in the lineup for a very, very fair price against a gettable righty. Francisco Alvarez at 32-26 is a playable catcher. Jeff McNeil, 35-28, contact-oriented hitter who worked his way up to 12 home runs in that rush of power that he had. Still at a 98 WRC plus, a 155 ISO. Not my favorite bet. 3,000, 2,500. I'd rather have Tyrone Taylor in the bottom spot there. 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases. That said, I'd rather that was Harrison Bader so that I could take him over Jeff McNeil. But Taylor is the choice between those two. What are we at? 422, 436. Yeah, Mets bats, always bats. Between the pitchers, Quintana over Dean Kramer, but it's very, very close, and they're both in the mix with Jose Barrios. Greg Biancone enjoyed some grilled pineapple. Grilled pineapple is really good. You know what gets a totally bad rap, in my opinion? And I'm not like, I don't know that I've ever actually ordered it, but I don't hate pineapple on pizza. I know that's a controversial opinion. Salty and sweet go together really, really well. It's not something I would order. Again, I don't think I ever have. I've certainly never ordered a pie of it. Maybe at some point in my life I've ordered a slice of it. I've definitely tried it a bunch of times. I don't think it's bad. And I really like pineapple. Larry C just says, I just hit the thumbs down. Hey, come on, it's a better take than using Kevin Pillar. Like Stephen Leibowitz is apparently doing. When you have to put Kevin Pillar as cleanup in your lineups, Angels. Woof. Apparently just the Angels are doing it. Dimitri, not my favorite, but it's okay once in a while. Yeah, again, I know it's a very controversial take, and again, it wouldn't be my choice if we were all in a room and it was saying, like, hey, let's get 10 pies for everybody. Even in 10 pies. 20 pies, 150 pies. I wouldn't throw it in there, especially because I know people hate it. But if there was one sitting there, like if I walked into a room and pizza had been ordered and there was one sitting there, I wouldn't be like, no, I'd just rather not have anything. Ricky Lee says, how do you not put pineapple on pizza is a real question. That's interesting. Dimitri says, I only had it with ham. Ham and pineapple on its own, like a nice grilled ham steak with pineapple. Ooh, that's good. Good stuff. Anyway, let's keep on rolling here. But yeah, hopefully the grilled pineapple's pretty good. What else is going on? Somebody asked a question in there that I wanted to answer. There it is, Jim Parrish. Hi, Tara. Am I crazy to play Seattle and Texas together as my main stacks? Texas, I'm always willing to go to. Seattle, a little bit less. I have a healthy respect for Buehler for whatever he's going to be in there for on that Dodgers side. They're also sub 4. They've also been pretty weak through the season, but they are definitely better with Rosarena and Julio in that lineup. They're a little bit more intriguing. It's not a terrible combination of teams if you're just talking about, like, star talent, depending obviously on what you're able to get to in combination there. Thinking about how those two teams go together, it's not bad. Because your two premium bats for the Mariners are outfielders, and then you want Cal Raleigh probably in the catcher or first base spot, depending on where you're playing. Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, and Corey Seager go outfield, shortstop, second base, so that combines well together. Yeah, it's not a bad combination of teams. I don't think you're crazy. You phrased the question, am I crazy? You are not crazy. Would that be my first choice? Probably not. But the Rangers, for me, the Rangers are always in the mix just because, as I was saying at the beginning of the show about that team, I just think that's a really talented man-for-man lineup. So they're always in the mix. Michael Lack loves anchovies. I do not love anchovies. Salty little fish. Best bet for leverage on the Phillies today, asks Mamba. I will cheat and I will look at where the ownership is. You're on DK, yeah, Mamba? Pretty sure. It'll probably align pretty similarly. So they're going up against Ronaldo Lopez, who has not pitched in the show in the month of August. Last we saw him was 3 innings against the Mets on July 28th. He made 1 rehab start in AAA on the 13th. Went 4 innings, faced 19 hitters, gave up 3 earned runs, hit a batter, struck out 4, walked 1. He was pretty good earlier in the season. 104 and 2/3, 19 starts, had a 2.06 ERA that's just sparkling down there, but a 3.88 xFIP. That's a lot more along the lines of who Ronaldo has been over the years. 11.4% swinging strikes with nearly a 24% strikeout rate is right about correct for this pitcher, but it gives up a decent amount of barrels, 9.1% barrels on the season, 40.6% hard hits is over the threshold, 89.6 miles an hour of exit velo, just short of it, and he's a fly ball-oriented pitcher. 15-degree average launch this year. Last year, 14.3. The year before, 15.3. Last year was all in relief. Year before was mostly in relief. He had much lower home run rates, or he had very low home run rates both of those years, but higher effort, in relief work. This year, on all this contact, he's managed to limit to 1.64% home run rate. This seems pretty deceptive and pretty lucky as home runs go. And there are some significant home run hitters in this Phillies lineup. I don't love the Ronaldo spot. I don't think he's cheap enough for the probably 5 innings that you're getting out of him. He did go 6 in 3 straight starts going back to mid-July when we last had him. The 7th, the 13th, the 22nd, and then just the 3 innings on the 28th. But probably not getting more than 5 here, and very, very threatening opponents. So 8,500 just doesn't feel like a great price. Maybe you can land around the medians, but I don't think you're getting much ceiling out of Ronaldo today. If you want ceiling, look to the other side of this game. Zach Wheeler at 9,300. That's a spectacular price on DraftKings. 10.5 on FanDuel. I'm happy to pay if I can figure out how to get there, and there's plenty of cheap options to work with. So definitely interesting for Zach Wheeler. Again, outside of the 3 bad starts, he had 1 4-run game and 1 3-run game, and then every other start has been 2 or fewer runs. So that's really, if you want to count the 3-run game, or count the 4-run game, a non-quality start, 4 earned runs over 5 innings. That means he's had 4 non-effective DFS starts this season. out of 24. It's a pretty good ratio. 27.5% strikeout rate overall, a 2.72 ERA, a 3.49 xFIP. 2.71% home run rate, and he's spectacular at inducing weak and medium contact, just 33.2% hard hits, 86.2 miles an hour of exit velo, 12.2% swinging strikes. Can definitely find some strikeout upside against the Braves team with a 23.2% strikeout rate. That's bolstered a little bit by the presence of Gio Urshela and Whit Merrifield at the bottom of this lineup. Excuse me. Top end of the lineup, we're talking about a 25.8% strikeout rate across all their key hitters. So a little bit deceptively lowered by these two bats and two totally non-threatening bats at the bottom of the lineup here. Love the opportunity for Wheeler today. Come on, Roto Grinders, work with me. Was hoping that ownership would have loaded by now. There we go. So Wheels is popular, but not crushingly so on a deep pitching slate over on DraftKings. I'm sure the same is true on FanDuel. Definitely playable. Definitely, if not the top priority pitcher, he's right there, 1-2. So love the spot for Wheeler. And then it doesn't look like on DraftKings the Phillies are really drawing any kind of problematic ownership. To go back to Mamba's question. You asked specifically who's the best bat for leverage, I believe was how you phrased it. And I'll just give you Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot because he's owned his projected ownership anyway per RG is the mid single digits. Nobody on the Phils is owned in double digits outside of Zach Wheeler. So any bat really has plenty of opportunity. The obvious guys are the three most popular. If you wanted a true answer to that, I would give you either Alec Bohm or Brandon Marsh. Both those guys super low owned for their potential. Bohm is probably the most correct version of that answer, but Marsh in the 8 spot. Yeah, it would probably be Bohm in the cleanup role for just 49 on DraftKings, owned in the low single digits. 3,500 at third base, first base on FanDuel, different story. Not sure where he's going to be owned over there. Probably also pretty low owned. But at just 4,900 on DraftKings, that's pretty terrific. So best option for leverage on the Phils is probably Alec Bohm, but nobody, again, owned in per RG's projections in the double digits even. So everybody up there qualifies for that. Kyle Schwarber, 14.44 in the home run model. Bryce Harper, 12.67. Playing, again, off of some pretty significant contact numbers despite the low home run output. He has given up a lot of premium contact. So I believe these numbers. I believe in these hitters from the top. Trey Turner's really interesting between those two guys. He's hit 14 home runs and stolen 14 bases. Creator runs 35% better than average. Another just absolutely elite shortstop there. And he's bookended by a guy with 28 home runs and another guy with 26 home runs, both of whom get on at an on-base percentage in the 370s. 139 WRC plus for Schwarbs, 145 for Harper. And then you get Bohm at 128 with a lot of power of his own. 13 home runs, 296, 351, 478 slash line. Terrific hitter. 13.8% strikeouts, 7.1% walks. It's a great option to have him in fourth. The top end of the Phils on FanDuel is definitely high priced. The fact that you can get to Bohm and then whether you go Stott, Realmuto, or drop down to Nicky or Brandon Marsh on DraftKings, you can make that a little bit cheaper. The three up top are very expensive, but that helps a little bit. Once you get to the fourth, you're down to $5,400 a piece, and there's no reason to think that Alec Bohm couldn't justify a $5,400 DraftKings price. And then if you throw Stott, let's say Stott into the mix at 4, you're down to $51. It's still expensive, and Stott's probably not a $5,100 player, but Bohm certainly is, and all those guys obviously are priced higher than that. So it just depends on how you want to think about it. Top 4 plus Brandon Marsh, who I like a lot at 3,300 in the 8 spot, down to 5,040. So it can help bring the average down overall. Stott has 25 stolen bases, but he's 14% below average creating runs. I would much rather have Brandon Marsh in that spot, which would change the answer back to probably Brandon Marsh if he's hitting 5th. We don't have this one, right? Yeah, I still don't think we have it. So keep an eye on Marsh wherever he lands in the lineup, but if you get him 5th or 6th or whatever, that's obviously an improvement over 8th. JT Realmuto, highly playable catcher, 8 home runs and 95 WRC plus in a low-end season for him over 307 plate appearances. But we all know what the quality from Realmuto has looked like over the seasons. We're down about 3 points of barrel, but the hard hit rate is right about the same. I like if you gave him another 300 plate appearances, which he doesn't have left this season, I would like his numbers to normalize back to more what we would expect from him. So still a high-end catcher in my mind, down to 4,400 where you have to play the position, just 3,000 where you don't. Easy to get to. Nick Castellanos, inconsistent, but does have power. He's slashing 250, 306, 419, a 169 ISO, 16 homers, right at league average. Seems like where he should belong at this point of his career as far as run creation goes. But a playable piece for 42-33. I just happen to prefer Marsh if you're going down lineup. 3,300, 2,900. He's at 12 home runs, stolen 14 bases. He's got a 102 WRC+. He hits the ball very, very hard. Lefty bat against a middle-of-the-road kind of variety. Easy to reach. Just again, hope he climbs the lineup. John Rojas, mix and match caliber player, 21 steals, but a very low end WRC+, and doesn't have any power in his bat. Mostly here to play D. The Braves are very cheap, really on both sites, but it's a greatly diminished version of this Braves lineup. No Austin Riley now. They've just taken some lumps all season long, and they're facing Zach Wheeler today. So I really don't think you go to the Braves. Pretty low-end opportunity, even for them. You can see the impact that even Marcell Ozuna, just 8.71 in the home run model against Wheeler. He's very difficult to hit homers against. Matt Olson, 5.55. Everybody else below 4. Challenging lineup for the Braves today. If you're going there, Michael Harrison, the leadoff role, 4,200, 3,000. Gives you a little bit of counting stat upside. 6 home runs and 8 stolen bases is kind of low end, over 302 plate appearances from him. Just a 113 ISO and an 83 WRC+. Missed a big chunk of the season and had a cold start, but a very talented player for the money. Ramon Laureano, not ideal. 3,000, 2,500. 7 home runs, 4 steals, over 179 chances. Still does hit the ball extremely hard. That's about all he does. He strikes out a lot. He can steal the occasional base, but he doesn't get on frequently. If you're stacking up a bunch of Braves, it's fine to include him because he's very cheap at the top of the lineup, but don't expect a lot. Not against Zach Wheeler. Marcell Ozuna, 56-38, is cheap for his 36 home runs. His 283 ISO, his 166 WRC+. Kind of on an island for quality on his own this season. Matt Olson would be my second priority in this lineup. 5,400, 3,400. He's got 21 home runs and a 193 ISO. Climbing a little bit, but a bad season overall out of Olson for his standards. Still pretty good contact, pretty good power numbers in a vacuum. So Olson remains playable, and he's a little cheaper than he was in the past. These are your top 2 priority bats. And then, for me, it's probably Harris Murphy down here at the catcher spot for just 3,700. That's actually a great price for Sean Murphy. He's hit 7 home runs and 183 chances, a 166 ISO. Makes pretty killer contact, and obviously was elite for contact last year in a, 21 home run season? Kelnick, 3,800, 2,500, mix and match quality outfielder, 13 home runs and an 89 WRC+. And then pretty weak shortstop option in Orlando Arcia. He's at 11 home runs, but everything else has been really bad this year. Gio Urshela and Whit Merrifield are pretty lousy at the bottom. Merrifield having his worst season in recent memory. He's stolen 16 bases, but 25% worse than average for runs. Hasn't really hit for any power. And then Urshela has never really been much of a hitter. Braves are highly skippable. Zach Wheeler, Phillies bats. Really nothing else. I don't want to go to the Braves against Wheeler, even for leverage. I don't think it's a good option, even with as cheap as they are. And then Ronaldo, I just don't think is appropriately priced for the 5 innings we're probably getting. Milwaukee against the Cards. Joker's dreaming under the table. Oops. Cards lineup is it, not the Brewers. So Frankie Montas, not a very good pitcher. 7,000, 7,900. He projects out okay. If you're playing him, I think it's here. I think it's just as a dart, and I think he should be cheaper. 20.1% strikeouts with a 10% walk rate this season, over 107 and a third, 22 starts. 4.86 ERA with a 4.56 xFIP. Is it me or has Frankie Montas made like most of his starts during the day this year? I really don't feel like we've talked about him a lot for a guy who's made 22 starts. I know we've had him a few times on main slates, but I don't feel like it's all that many. If you'd had me guess before the show, I would have said he had made fewer starts than that. This doesn't matter at all, but I'm curious. Where's day-night? Do they not have it on here? Huh. Well, never mind. The Labs split board, I guess, doesn't have day-night. Interesting.
HRT radio split from TuneIn.
No, Alexa, off. Memento. Alexa, off. I don't know what the hell she just started playing. But yeah, no day-night splits. But regardless, I don't feel like we've had Montas that many times, and when we have, we haven't really wanted him, so no real need to talk about him here. 3.35% home run rate, but it comes on 41.6% hard hits, pretty significant barrel rate, 89.2 miles an hour of exit velo. Montas over the years has had okay numbers. 4.05 ERA at 3.61 xFIP 2 years ago with a 23.4% strikeout rate, pretty decent swinging strike rate. Not bad for power. Just one of those pitchers that every time you expect anything from him, tends to disappoint. Pretty low end, pretty low ceiling. More similar to like a Jose Barrios, I think, than anybody else. Eric Fede on the other side, 79.84, has a 21.1% strikeout rate this year, a 3.40 ERA against a 4.11 xFIP. Just an 8.9% swinging, 25% CSW. Thought it was a weird trade deadline acquisition for this team. 7,984 is not a bad price, but he's facing a pretty good Brewers lineup. A lot of positive run creators on that team, a lot of talented power hitters on that team, some stolen base upside on that team. I don't love the spot for Fede. It's another one where I think if you're going to play it, you do it over here at 79, just in the mix as a medium price SP2. But it's another one where I feel like the ceiling is kind of low. I feel like you're just kind of buying into those medians. 21.1% strikeout rate this year. 16.42 years ago in a basically full season. Limited pitcher. Eric Fede's never really been overly appealing for DFS. Last time out, just 2 strikeouts, 2 walks, 4 earned on 2 home runs, 6 hits overall, over 6 innings at the Reds. Start before that, he did strike out 6 against a low-end Rays team over 5 innings, 1 earned run on 4 hits. Pair of 4 strikeout games. One of them he gave up 5 earned on in 5 innings to the Cubs. Another one he gave up 3 earned on 6 hits in 4 innings to the Mariners. Strikeout high for the season was... Ooh, wow, he had an 11 strikeout game? I forgot about that. 11 strikeouts back on April 23rd against the Twins. That's right. Had a 9 strikeout game and an 8 strikeout game in there. Since June, since the beginning of June, he had a 7 strikeout game to begin June. And then it's been 6 strikeouts or fewer since then, and he's hit 6 just twice. Most of these games are 3 or 4 strikeouts. That's who Eric Fede really is. The strikeouts that we saw at the beginning of the year were kind of illusory. 22.9% strikeout rate for the projected version of the Brewers lineup. They're not incredibly low strikeout, but some of their key hitters like Bryce Turang's very low strikeout. Jackson Chourio in his rookie season, 21.1% strikeout, not bad. William Contreras is fairly low strikeout. Helped out by Sal Frelick and Joey Ortiz at the bottom of the lineup. A couple decent targets for him in the middle there, but I don't know, not really high end. I greatly prefer the Brewers' bats to Eric Fede shares, and the same is probably true about the Cards against Frankie Montas, but they're lower priority stack, I think. Where do we line up in Vegas? Yeah, both teams in the middle. That's right, I was saying that this game would be a weird one when we talk about it. Neither team above 4 against these pitchers. I don't really understand. We've got mid-70s, 5-mile-an-hour headwind, but that's nothing. Just a 7.5 run total. I'm kind of struggling with that total. I don't really see why we're that low. One of these pitchers has a 4.86 ERA. The other's got 3.40, but obviously, reason to expect a little higher. It should be at least there, and probably more realistically there, honestly. That's an oddly low run total for these two pitchers. But I would prefer... I said it the other way around, but I guess I gotta prefer targeting Frankie Montas, because Fede has been the better of the two by a pretty wide margin. I just like that Brewers lineup better. And you get a good, cheap bat in the heart of the lineup if Tyler Black is in there again, hitting third. 2,500 at first base on DraftKings, 2,400 on FanDuel. 51 pretty empty plate appearances so far in the show, but put up pretty good numbers in the minors. So it's kind of an interesting option there, especially with 3-position eligibility on the FanDuel slate. Hitting behind Bryce Turang, who needs to get on base a little bit better than 321, but that's not a bad on-base percentage. 37 steals, a 193 WRC+. Churrios hit 15 home runs and stolen 17 bases while slashing 270, 316, 437 as a rookie, a 108 WRC+. He's up to a 45.6% hard hit rate and a 6.7% barrel rate. Still costs just 4,100 somehow on DraftKings. 31 on FanDuel is more correct. This is a bargain against Eric Fede. 7.77 in your home run model. William Contreras for just 4,900. Not uninteresting where you have to play catchers. 3,300. You consider him the first baseman on this team where you don't have to play catchers. 17 homers, 282, 355, 464, a 183 ISO, 128 WRC+. Tremendous catcher bat. 10% barrels, nearly 50% hard hits. Willy Adames still having a good year. 22 homers, 13 steals, a 200 ISO, 118 WRC+. Garrett Mitchell, mix and match quality outfielder. Rhys Hoskins, some power at first base for 4,000 on DraftKings, 29 on FanDuel. He's got a 9.79 to lead the team in the home run model. 20 on the year, a 208 ISO. Just doing exactly what they're paying him to do. 11.6% barrels. He's slashing just 223, 306, 431. He's not a tremendous on-base option. He's not a great 3 true outcomes hitter, but he's got a ton of power. Going up against Eric Fede, you have no issues expecting that Rhys Hoskins would hit a home run. Sal Frelick, contact hitter with a little bit of speed, 15 steals, a 330 on base, but just an 88 WRC+. Joey Ortiz at the bottom, 8 home runs, 7 steals, and a 111 WRC+ with a 345 on base. Probably the better of the two as a wraparound, and you get him at either third base or second base, depending on where you're playing. Sal Frelick more along the lines of just another outfielder, but he is cheap. Both guys cheap at the bottom of the lineup. Brewers play basically 9 deep if this is the configuration. On the card side, we have the confirmed lineup. Mason Wynn, mix and match quality shortstop for DFS. 11 home runs, 10 steals, 145 ISO, 108 WRC+. Better real-life shortstop than a DFS shortstop, but he's there. He's in the leadoff spot. He's okay. Alec Burleson for 44.31 has 21 home runs and 449 chances this year. Solid little 40.2% hard hit rate. An okay 7.6% barrel rate. That's an improvement over last year for him, not necessarily over the year before. I think that was a fairly short sample, though. Low strikeout, low walk, so a lot of well-struck balls in play, slashing 277, 309, 463, creating runs 14% better than average. Wilson Contreras on this side of this game, 5,200, 3,200 across sites, another premium catcher bat who hits high up in the lineup. 15 home runs, 215 ISO out of him, a 141 WRC+. Either Contreras, premium catcher, you can one-off either of these catchers, go whichever direction you want if you're stacking either one of these teams. But priority bats on both sides of this game for the Contrerases. Brendan Donovan, not ideal for the cleanup role. 3,900, 2,800, 9 home runs on the year. A 336 on base with a 394 slug is okay. Puts him at a, 730 OPS. It's not bad for the type of player that he is, but he belongs more down in this territory. Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, even in their mediocre seasons, should probably still be occupying that cleanup spot. 108 WRC+ for Donovan, though. You get Arenado at a 102. He's hit 13 home runs, 268, 322, 394. Very low end for ISO, for extra base hits, and for premium contact this year. Awful season out of Arenado, but he still doesn't really strike out. Medium walk rate, so he does put the ball in play a ton for a guy who used to be a superstar. Lars Nootbaar at 35.27 has decent talent. 8 home runs and 5 steals, but a pretty mediocre season. 101 WRC+ over his 268 chances, but he's hitting the ball very, very hard. Talented outfielder for 35.27. Goldschmidt hitting the ball very hard, kind of the opposite of what Arenado is doing. Hitting the ball very hard, collecting some extra base hits with a 162 ISO, but not as many as in previous years. 19 home runs, he's been all right, but just a 91 WRC+ out of him. Nolan Gorman, 16.7% barrels, but hard hits are way down. Consistency is way down. 205, 274, 404. Pretty rough in the slash line, but 19 home runs. One of the team leaders, a 199 ISO, one of the team leaders, 89 WRC plus. And then there's Victor Scott, who is just fast. Can't manage to get on base. A 152 on base percentage is pathetic. Over 105 plate appearances, that is just sad. He should really get up there and just try and lean into pitches. He can't use his one skill set if he can't get on base, so feels like a skippable spot. This, again, I think for me, the run total feels like it should be about a run higher, and I would lean Brewers over Cardinals rather than Cardinals over Brewers. That's just me. Bats above pitchers, though. I don't like either of these pitchers at all. They're not unfairly priced if you have a different take on it and you do like these pitchers, or if you just want to take a target on one of these teams at fairly low ownership, fair prices. It's fine. It's not a mistake necessarily to throw a few shares of either one of these guys, but I don't know. The amount of times they're going to win a tournament for you, pretty few and far between. Anyway, we got to keep on rolling. We got a lot more games to talk about, and it's 5:07. Fortunately, we do not have to talk Tigers pitching. It's Bo Brisky, and then I believe it's going to be this Brian Salmons guy coming in bulk relief. That's what it was 5 days ago. He pitched on the 14th in bulk relief. He went 5 2/3. He struck out 4 Mariners, gave up 1 earned on 2 hits, but that's the Mariners. Let's see how he handles the Cubs. Cubbies at the top end showing a ridiculous amount of power. Again, the wind is blowing in Wrigley Field today, but we're going to try and defy that a little bit, I think, with some Cubs bats. For the season, we got a 5.88% home run rate for Brian Salmons. No sample in previous years. This is a pitcher who is, I believe, 29? Yeah, 29 years old. And I made this too small. I had to shrink it because his game log or his career stats are so long because he's 29. If he had any talent, he would have been pitching in the show by now, I guess is the point. In 17 starts in AAA this season as a 29-year-old, a 4.18 ERA with a 5.31 xFIP, 21.8% strikeout rate against a 9.5% walk rate, allowing a 1+ home run per 9. And the reason that the Cubs' home runs are up so high is he's had significant home run issues even through the minors. Going back to 2021, and this is going to be in context of home runs per 9, not home run percentage home run rate like I usually do it. But back to 2021, AA as a 26-year-old, 1.99 home runs per 9. AAA that same season, 2.02. Those were a 58 2/3 and a 49 inning sample. 50 innings in AA the following season, 2.52 home run per 9. 2023 AA, AAA, a 1.61 and a 1.81. So when I say he has significant home run issues, trust me, significant home run issues. We just need him to actually enter the game. Let me see if there's any reporting on this. Still don't see it. Oh, Fado's in now? Well, that's different. All right, let's change that out. Is Fado opening or is Fado making a full start? He's just been opening lately, so it might be the same thing with as Brisky, and it still might be Salmons. Yeah, Fado hasn't gone more than an inning, more than 2 innings all season. Let's see if I Fado. They had Brisky up earlier. That's why I was saying Brisky. But either way, I care less about the opener. Yeah, Brian Salmons is coming in. That's what I care about. So I think this power that the Cubbies are showing, it's pretty realistic. It's a matter of how good the Cubs are at putting guys on base before that power comes through. And the Cubs are pretty good at getting on base. So I kind of like this spot for the Cubs offense. And if people are going to jump ship just because the wind is blowing in against a pitcher with those kind of home run numbers through the minor leagues, I'll take advantage. They're not the highest total on the board, but again, this is a day where 4.10 doesn't compare unfavorably. We're going to quibble over a tenth of a run between them and basically every other team on the board outside of these three. I think the Cubs are interesting to them. Ian Happ is the home run pick of the day at 16.46. I also give you Seiya Suzuki as the Cubs pick at 15.30. They have 22 and 16 home runs respectively, a 222 ISO and a 203 ISO. They bookend Michael Busch, who's a pretty decent power bat on his own. He's a lefty at 4,000, 2,800, first base only on both sites. Disappointing that he doesn't have his second base eligibility. That made them so much more stackable when he was second base eligible on FanDuel, but appropriate that he's first base only. He's hit 16 home runs as well this season. He gets on base at a 345 clip. You get a 338 out of Ian Happ. You get a 335 out of Seiya Suzuki, 333 out of Cody, 342 out of Isaac Paredes if he's in the lineup. There's a lot of on-base ability out of this Cubs team. Combine a lot of on-base with a lot of power potential against. The only downside is when they bring a bulk reliever or when they bring an opener in, a lot of the time you get diminished by just teams use an elite high leverage type of a relief arm in that role. Against Alex Faedo, who has a 22.6% strikeout rate in his role in his work exclusively in this kind of a role this year. I guess not exclusively. 5 opening outings, 36 games total, but exclusively pitching an inning or so at a time. Faedo has given up 9 home runs to 239 hitters. That amounts to a 1.46 home run per 9. 22.6% strikeouts, 11.3% walks. He's got a 3.72 ERA and a 4.36 xFIP on the season. There's no reason to think that Alex Faedo is going to be any better than Brian Sammons is for that first inning or 2 innings, whatever he pitches. So top end of the lineup is honestly totally secure here. I'm really not worried about it. Suzuki for just 4,700, 3,300 has an 11.7% barrel rate, 49.2% hard hits. Cody Bellinger doesn't really hit the ball hard. Never really has in terms of what the rates look like, but always comes up with decent home run totals, is a pretty effective hitter overall. 273, 333, 426 in 412 chances this year, 13 home runs, a 111 WRC+. Very playable, but also, especially on DraftKings where he's their most expensive player by several $100s, kind of skippable, which is weird because it's Cody Bellinger, former MVP. Depends what you're stacking him together with, whether you can get 2 extra outfielders as well, because you get Happ and Suzuki as higher priority bats in the outfield. So it depends on what you want to do. They're difficult to stack with, say, the Yankees, because there's so many outfielders in play. It's doable, but it's difficult. So it depends. But Bellinger at 52 compared to everybody else in the 4s, maybe a little bit more skippable than you might otherwise think. 32, he's just in the same mix as everybody else on FanDuel. Paredes, if he's in the lineup, has 18 home runs this year, a 185 ISO, a 121 WRC+. Dealing with, I forget what the injury or the ailment was, but has a questionable little flag on him. Nico Horner, 43, 29, 5 home runs, 22 steals, a mix and match quality option. 323 on base isn't terrible, but just a 92 WRC+. Dansby still in kind of a tailspin, 9 home runs, 10 stolen bases, a 123 ISO, 83 WRC+. Still hitting the ball hard, and he's gotten exceedingly cheap. 2,700 on FanDuel, 3,300 on DraftKings. That's cheap for all the years of success that Dansby's given us. We're just kind of riding on faith and memory of those good seasons, though, when we put him in the lineups at this season. Pete Crow Armstrong just really playing defense this year, 23 steals, but a 255 on base, 68 WRC+. And then Miguel Amaya, mix and match quality catcher at the absolute best, and probably not even that. Tigers bats against Assad. I want to say you can do worse, but I'm not sure that's totally true. Tigers are pretty bad. Assad just 4 2/3 in his last start, 2 strikeouts, 2 walks. A strikeout and 2 walks in the start before that over 4 innings. Just 4 innings in the start before that, so hasn't completed the 5th in any of his August starts. Had the 6-inning start back in the end of July, and then had not finished the 5th for 3 straight starts before that one. Really question the innings upside. 19.7% strikeout rate at 10.5% walk rate. 3.19 ERA looks really good, but the 4.72 xFIP is the real number. Just 6.4% swinging, 25% CSW. Even the Tigers could find success against Javier Assad. He's been okay at limiting premium contact, limiting power, but it is a fly ball trajectory, and there are barrels available there. They've got Kerry Carpenter in this lineup again, and he absolutely crushes the ball when he makes contact from the left side. I actually really like Kerry Carpenter as a hitter. 4,100 on DraftKings is very cheap. 3,000 on FanDuel is cheap enough. He's hit 11 home runs, and he has a 309 ISO in 183 plate appearances this year. I think you could throw some Kerry Carpenter at Javier Assad. You can pair him with Riley Green, who's back, another premium lefty bat in this lineup. 12.8% barrels, 45.1% hard hits, and 17 home runs with a 219 ISO out of Green this year. Extreme positive run creator for as bad as his team is, a 134 WRC+. He's been their best bat all year long. Not a bad pairing of lefties off the top here. Parker Meadows has raw skills. We haven't really seen it come together in any significant way in the show. He's 11% worse than average for run creation, 4 home runs and 9 steals in 144 plate appearances. It's been okay for counting stats. He does have a decent 9.2% barrel rate this year. A lot of strikeouts, but the ability to draw a walk has been demonstrated. He's very cheap, so I think you can include him in some of your Tiger stacks, but he's lower priority than Green and Carpenter. Colt Keith is probably my number 3 priority bat in this lineup, if not better than that. He's hit 11 home runs in 425 chances. He has a 96 WRC+. He's very, very cheap at second base. Spencer Torkelson back in the lineup, 4,200, 2,800, having a terrible year. Got himself sent back down to AAA. 238 plate appearances, 205, 274, 344, 4 home runs on the board, 25% worse than average for run creation. Last year, he had bounced his way up to 31 homers and a 213 ISO with a 107 WRC+. Everything else about that line is pretty bad, but he was a significant power bat for this team last year, and it seemed like he was finally fulfilling his draft spot. Last year had 14.1% barrels, 50.5% hard hits. Was really, again, it seemed like he found his footing. It was becoming the power hitter he was supposed to be, and it just completely fell off again this year. So, don't know where we're getting, but he's very cheap, and honestly, cheap enough to find out at first base. Jace Young, 2,200, 2,300, big-time prospect for them. 12 plate appearances so far. It's been all right. Minor league numbers out of Young so far this year. And we'll do Sweeney after this. 415 plate appearances. Young has 14 home runs, a 257, 377, 454 slash line, 198 ISO, created runs 17% better than average, and was drawing a 16.1% walk rate in AAA. 23 years old, premium prospect. He is the, per Graphs ratings, 4th organizational, 94th overall. And I think he creeped up in MLB's ratings higher than that. And then Sweeney, in AAA this season, Sweeney, 440 plate appearances, 13 home runs, 16 stolen bases, a 172 ISO, 254, 334, 427. 13% worse than average for run creation and just the 172 ISO. Not a great power bat despite the 13 home runs, but an interesting enough, line drive, moderate power, decent speed kind of a guy. Draws 10% walks in AAA this year, but was striking out at a 26.8% rate. Maybe not fully cooked yet, but is very, very cheap. Dead minute shortstop on DraftKings, 21 at shortstop on FanDuel. If you're going to the Tigers, it's not a terrible mistake. I'd honestly rather have him at those prices than Javier Baez. Jake Rogers, mix and match quality catcher with some power, 9 home runs, but no ability to for average or get on base regularly. Just cheap power. Cubs bats, Tigers bats. Neither pitcher, but if you need a pitcher from this game, it's Javier Assad at 69. Don't think I'd go there on FanDuel. Probably not getting the innings. Pirates, Mitch Keller. Rangers, Cody Bradford. So Bradford, I mentioned at the top of the show, in his 6 starts, 36 innings this year, has a 22.8% strikeout rate. He's made 4 starts since returning to action. 2 of them were pretty short, 2 innings and then 3 2/3 on July 30th and August 3rd. 1 in bulk relief, 1 as a full-fledged start. Then made a 5-inning start against the Yankees in which he gave up just 1 earned on 5 hits and he struck out 7. Pretty interesting start there. Followed that one up with 6 innings of quality against the Twins. 2 earned runs on 6 hits. Only struck out 2 and walked 2. Gave up a home run. But still just getting through 6 innings for a pretty cheap price. Kind of interesting. And I think there's more strikeout upside than that with the Pirates in town. 24.3% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup, including IKF at 14.5 and Just Money Grandal at 17.2. A lot of their significant bats are pretty high strikeout. So it's not a terrible spot. I don't fully trust Cody Bradford. Last year, if we're looking at the numbers, he was a target for me. He was giving up a 4.7% home run rate in his 8 starts, 56 innings, 5.30 ERA with a 4.43 xFIP. Was throwing a decent swinging strike rate, though, had a similar strikeout rate, but was just giving up a ton of premium contact and power. That's been a little bit of an issue in his limited action so far this year, but not as bad. Against the Pirates, I think you could do worse than going 81-83 for Cody Bradford, especially for him, especially on FanDuel. That fits in for a pretty cheap price compared to a lot of the pitchers that are above him. He's right here. Right? Compared to these guys, it's not a bad price. Shane Baz against Oakland is a little bit better priced for a slightly higher projection. So some interesting options there. But this is the first one where I'm saying I think a little bit better here than maybe he fits in over there. Keller at just 77.88, also kind of interesting. Another pitcher who kind of falls into that Jose Berrios bucket of like just probably when it's all said and done, just pretty much average. 20.7% strikeouts, a 3.95 ERA with a 4.18 xFIP. We've seen big jumps from Keller in quality. We've also seen him fall through the floor for quality in starts. It comes and it goes. He's one of the more frustrating pitchers in fantasy baseball. Last time out, 5 innings, 8 earned runs against the Padres in San Diego, 7 earned runs in 4 innings against the Dodgers in Los Angeles the start before that. Just 4 innings against Arizona. I don't remember what happened there. 4 strikeouts, just 1 hit. Not sure why he came out. 7 innings of 2-run ball, 2-hit ball against Arizona the start before that. Struck out 6. And then a 7-inning start against St. Louis. Struck out just 3, but only 1 earned run allowed on 6 hits. Has that ability. 8 innings against the Mets, 2 starts prior to that one. Gave you 6 strikeouts, just 2 earned runs. The meltdowns are bad, the peaks are good, and then there's a lot of just kind of meh starts for your money. So when he's high to medium high priced on FanDuel at 88, I think he's kind of skippable. At 77, though, on DraftKings, that's kind of a compelling price. I just don't love targeting this Rangers team. There are some strikeouts through the middle, and there's definitely a lot of underperformance on this team. But as I've been saying through the show, man for man, this is a very talented lineup despite some underperformance. So not one of my favorite targets. I think Keller's playable, but low priority. If you're rostering Pirates bats against Cody Bradford, I don't think it's a terrible idea. Especially if you build a Cody Bradford position, it's probably one that you should roster some Pirates as a hedge. And you could take some cheap Pirates bats against Cody Bradford and just hope for the continued regression back to like that level. Wouldn't be a terrible idea. Brian Reynolds is really the only expensive bat up top, and on FanDuel he's not even. 5,200 on DraftKings, 31 on FanDuel. He's got 19 home runs, a 179 ISO, 124 WRC+. You also have O'Neal Cruz later in the lineup. He's 51 on DK, 32 on FanDuel. Between all those guys, though, it's completely offset by having all 3 of these guys in the 3s, as well as IKF at the top of the lineup if you want them in the 3s. Guy like Michael A in the 2s. So even with these guys in the 5s, that's a very cheap lineup. It's easy enough to get to, and everybody's cheap on FanDuel. IKF is just really a contact hitter, but a 14.5% strikeout rate against 4% walks means he puts a ton of balls in play. This year he's succeeding with that. 285, 329, 420, 112 WRC+. If you're going to Pirates, you can include him for a cheap price. He plays 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. You want him at second base more than any of those other spots. Reynolds is a star. 46.4% hard hits and 9.7% barrels. Then it runs into Connor Joe, who's just kind of mediocre, 3,500, 2,500. He's cheap. He's hit 7 home runs in 351 chances, 91 WRC+. I'd honestly hope for a different hitter in that 3 spot. Joey Bart at 3,800, 3,000 has had a very successful 198 plate appearances, 12 home runs at 249 ISO, mashing the ball at a 12.6% barrel, 44.1% hard hit, going up against a mediocre lefty with some contact problems. Joey Bart makes a lot of sense at the catcher spot for a cheap price for 38 and 3,000 across sites. You can play him like he's a first baseman on FanDuel, no problem with it. Brian De La Cruz, another righty bat with some power, 10.2% barrels, 41.3% hard hits, 36-26 across sites. He's hit 18 home runs. Most of them came with the fish, but he's a capable enough guy if you're stacking up Pirates, and he's reason enough to consider Pirates. Let's go. O'Neal Cruz this season against lefties. 5 of his 18 home runs, but slashing 194, 233, 80. 65 WRC plus and a 185 ISO versus much better 282, 345, 492, 210 ISO and 128 WRC plus against opposite-handed pitching. So he's diminished. That's why he's dropping in the lineup a little bit. But there's still ability there. Still a handful of his home runs and not a bad power mark against same-handed pitching. I don't love paying that price for him. That price is fine. He's all right. If you're going to Pirates, he remains kind of a high priority bat. He definitely can stuff some counting stats. And if you chase Cody Bradford early, obviously you have more opportunity. Michael A., Just Money Grandal, Jared Triolo at the bottom of the lineup. Three pretty disappointing players. Grandal is just, kind of on the back end of the career at this point. Michael A., just 4 home runs and 10 stolen bases, 55 WRC plus. And then Triolo not getting on base at all this season, 287 on base, a 66 WRC plus. So it's kind of a 7-man lineup. Maybe I'd throw Michael A. into consideration and make it 7. 6-man for sure off the top, though. Like the Rangers a lot more. Marcus Semien underperforming this season, but cheap, 48-32. 18 home runs, a 162 ISO. Among all second basemen that are eligible on this slate, he's still one of the best options. So with his price down, I think it's totally justified to get to shares off the top of this lineup. Corey Seager, 53-36, a 9.20 in the home run model. 28 homers on the season, 234 ISO, coming off a big day. Josh Smith at 43-3,000 is very cheap for a guy slashing 266, 355, 417, and creating runs 21% better than average. The numbers have come down along with the, as the plate appearances have gone up after the very, very strong start. And all of that was, predicted by X stats. That's why we look at those kinds of things. But I continue to think that he is going to hold up somewhere around like this. I think there's going to be a point where it's going to be line in the sand and no further as far as the decline goes. And I still think it makes him a pretty decent player when he's hitting third for this team at cheap, cheap prices. Direct correlation with all their key bats. Adolis Garcia at 42-32 has 21 home runs and 10 stolen bases. He's kind of pulled his act together a little bit. He's up to 226, 289, 407, 93 WRC plus. Still a ways to go over the last month, 6 weeks, whatever we're at for the rest of the season. But it's a very, very high quality player for the very cheap prices, especially on DK. 4,200 for Adolis Garcia is way cheap. Nathaniel Lowe at 37-29, quality bat, 351 on base, a good run creator, good contributor, hit for more power over the past couple of seasons, has that ability. High walk, medium strikeout, definitely a good option at first base for a cheap price. That said, there's a lot of quality first basemen where you find yourself skipping Nathaniel Lowe a lot. That puts you in with a lot of other people, which is why he ends up being low-owned for a cheap player. So I like getting him to him for DFS purposes, but he is easy to accidentally have weaved your way around while still getting to a quality first baseman. So I get why he's typically low-owned, but he is a good player. Josh Young, 4,100, 3,200, 4 home runs, a 195 ISO, a 105 WRC plus in his 91 chances. Decent power bat, still very cheap. Seems like they don't really remember how good he is on DraftKings, 4,100. That's really cheap. 3,200 on FanDuel is more correct. Wyatt Langford, 4,000, 3,000, 7 home runs, 11 steals. Kind of a disappointing rookie season overall, but a talented kid with a 42.9% hard hit rate, not a terrible 7.6% barrel. Doesn't really strike out that bad, draws decent amount of walks at 8.7%. He's playable. Playable with a fairly high ceiling, let's say. Jonah Heim, a little bit of catcher power, 11 home runs, a 117 ISO. Leota Taveras, capable of giving you counting stats as a wraparound in a mix and match sense, but not at all consistent. Cody Bradford, Rangers bats, Pirates bats, Mitch Keller. All 4 corners are playable. Red Sox Astros, we've got both of these lineups in. Forgive me if I talk through those teams without the lineups. We do have them both. The Pirates moved Bart to 3, Connor Joe to 4. Dela Cruz, O'Neill Cruz, Triolo, Taylor, Alika Williams at the bottom of the Pirates. The Rangers is roughly the same. Semien, Seager, Smith, Garcia, Lowe, Young, Heim, Kelly, Leody Taveras. So putting 2 catchers into that lineup with Carson Kelly slipping in there. He's having a decent year. Mix and match quality option. Let me put these lineups in so we can talk about the actual lineups because they're 2 important ones. We've got Nick Pivetta, one of the top-end strikeout pitchers on this entire slate, but he's in one of the worst matchups for strikeouts facing the Houston Astros here. And then we've got Ronel Blanco, who's just pitched over his head for most of the season, going up against a very, very good and improved version of the Red Sox lineup. So I tend to lean bats, despite having two pitchers who have been largely effective overall this season. This is another one that lands kind of interesting. 4.23 implied total, 4.37 implied total. I think Vegas feels the same way. They slightly favor the bats. Pivetta, for his 30% strikeout rate and his very respectable 5.9% walk rate, has been pitching at a 4.49 ERA this season. He's given up a 5.12% home run rate. It's just one real blip. You can see the difference there. xFIP discounts home runs. 3.39 xFIP versus a 4.49 ERA. If he had this as his ERA, we'd be talking about Cy Young caliber season from him. 11.5% swinging strikes, 27.3% CSW. This could be higher with that, but obviously finding success for strikeouts. This version of the Astros lineup, 22.3% strikeouts. That's pushed up way high by Shea Whitcomb over 12 plate appearances, though. It's a little deceptive there. Chas McCormick at 28.6 is believable. John Singleton at 27.7. But like we always focus on, their key bats are elite at not striking out. And that's really the big concern here. And you throw Mauricio Dubon into the mix as well. So Pivetta's going to be challenged to find his usual quality. 8,600 on FanDuel, I think he's borderline playable. He's going to be pretty low owned. 7,800 on DraftKings, I think, is a different thing. That's appealing because that's really, really cheap for the potential for him to go out and just wipe out some of these higher strikeout young guys at the back of the lineup and then find a couple against the actually good hitters. So I think he's really playable here. Really playable to downright interesting. And he's just borderline here. Blanco at 8,800 is a lot less interesting to me despite projecting higher. I think he's lower upside. I think he's lower ceiling. He's got a 2.89 ERA, but he's got a 4.12 xFIP. I'd rather have this pitcher. 13.4% swinging strike rate is very, very good. 28.9% CSW should be a lot higher with that swinging strike rate. 24.3% strikeout rate should honestly be higher with that swinging strike rate as well. He's also given up some premium contact, 9.4% barrels, and he's a fly ball pitcher, 17-degree average launch. He's managed weak contact, 34.8% hard hits is very good, 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo, not problematic. But he's lost some home runs along the way, 3.56. You can see that Stuff Plus has him 5 points below average. Pitching over his head for sure, and running into an absolute buzzsaw of a Red Sox lineup here. There are strikeouts available for him. 24.2% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the Red Sox lineup. But look at all these dangerous lefties. Big righty bat in the middle of that lineup as well. Danny Jansen, David Hamilton, Ceddanne Rafaela. It's a 9-man Red Sox lineup that plays pretty well. Even their low end, you're talking about 3 guys with an average WRC plus of 94 to round out the lineup. As compared to a lot of other bottom 3, these guys are pretty good. And they give you good counting stat numbers across those guys. I would happily throw Red Sox at Ronel Blanco, but they're not a top priority stack. I would happily throw Astros at Nick Pivetta, but they're not a top priority stack. They, again, land just kind of in the middle. These are 2 of the better totals, but there's a lot of teams that land right around those mid-4s. So with so many teams at similar totals, we're just arguing about, these are 2 very good lineups to consider, but they're facing some of the better performing pitchers, whether they're better on talent. I think Pivetta is. I don't think Blanco is. But it's some of the more challenging spots. Jarren Duran at 58.36, 16 home runs, 31 steals, a hell of a good season, 213 ISO, 129 WRC plus for the lefty who hits the ball extremely hard off the top of the lineup. He's expensive, but it's for a reason, and you can offset that pretty easily by just throwing Willie Abreu into the mix. Abreu hits the ball even harder than Jarren Duran does. Strikes out a little bit more, but walks a little bit more. 267, 334, 503 versus 287, 344, 500. 14 home runs versus 16 home runs in 335 plate appearances versus 571 plate appearances, I'll point out. 237 ISO versus 213, 127 WRC plus versus 129. What is, outside of a few strikeouts, what is the real difference between these 2 hitters that justifies that gigantic price gap? 500 is a smaller price gap on FanDuel, but it's still there. This is extreme. And I'm not saying Duran should be cheaper. I'm absolutely saying that Willie Abreu should be more expensive. 12.6% barrels, 48.8% hard hits. against the guy giving up 9.4% barrels? Take the upside. Tristan Casas, don't think I need to sell him too hard. First base for 4,700, 2,700 with his power upside. Hit 6 home runs earlier in the year over 108-ish plate appearances. He's made a few plate appearances since coming back. Has a 221 ISO on the season, a 120 WRC plus. Last year in early season in his career, 502 plate appearances, 24 home runs, a 226 ISO, 129 WRC plus. Not a bad pickup for the Red Sox getting Tristan Casas back from the IL. Rafi Devers, superstar, 5,900, 3,900, has 27 home runs and a 290 ISO, 14 for him in the home run model. Puts him ahead of Tristan Casas just slightly and slightly behind Tyler O'Neill. Hits from the right side of the plate, 5,500, 3,200. He's got 22 homers on the season, 14.7 in the home run model, a 265 ISO for him, 138 WRC plus. Look at all those premium positive run creators for the Red Sox. Masataka Yoshida, 4,300, 3,000. It pains me to talk this glowingly about the Boston Red Sox, by the way. 9 home runs for Yoshida, 150 ISO, a 130 WRC plus over 303 plate appearances, and we're up to 300, 376, 449. Totally delivering on what he's supposed to be doing, which is being a super high-end line drive type of a bat. Not a bad option in the 6th spot. Danny Jansen, a good power bat from the catcher spot, 3,400, 2,700. He's hit 8 home runs and 264 chances, a 161 ISO. Gets to take a few pokes at the monster. David Hamilton for 45.29 has 31 steals, just a 313 ISO, just a 97 WRC plus, but there's definitely ability there. Also 7 home runs in 291 plate appearances. Sedan Rafaela, good for counting stats if nothing else. 9-man option with some good mix and match quality down the bottom. The Astros have these 2 elite bats at the top of the lineup. There's no Alex Bregman. Believe he is injured. Don't know if they put him on the IL, but I know he's banged up and not in the confirmed lineup. Altuve, 55-36, has 16 home runs and 16 steals, a 126 WRC plus. Easy to reach, but for the money, if you're going to Astros, he's the top priority. I want to say it's a little bit more of a limited season overall for Altuve. It doesn't make him quite as appealing, but second base, he remains one of the best possible options on the entire slate. Like I said about Marcus Semien, and Altuve is having the better season between the two. So he is still a high priority target, but you can make a fair argument that he should be a little bit cheaper with this season's output, which is weird to say for a guy hitting 300, 352, 440 with a 126 WRC plus when I usually argue it the other way. Part of the reason the 140 ISO down from the 200s in the last couple of seasons, the home run output is not necessarily diminished compared to last year, where at 16 he hit 17 in 410 chances last year. So he's a little behind that pace. He's definitely behind the 28 home runs and 604 plate appearances from 2 years ago. But still, this is in a vacuum tremendous season. Jordan Alvarez, 6,000, 4,100, has 25 home runs, a 246 ISO, one of the best bats in all of baseball. Always happy to have Alvarez in the lineup. He's expensive, but he's totally worth it. Against Nick Pivetta, who's giving up all this power, all that premium contact, you can do a lot worse than Jordan Alvarez. And he doesn't really strike out, 14.9% strikeouts for all that power. Pretty significant bat. Jainer Diaz, 46-32, and Jeremy Pena, 44-31, become higher priorities with the absences in this lineup to continue to that absence of Kyle Tucker, who's been out for most of the season with a bruise on his shin, and Alex Bregman now out of the lineup as well. Just pushes the issue for these two bats, and they're not bad. 299, 325, 456 out of Diaz, 119 WRC plus with 14 homers, and then Pena's giving you a 106 WRC plus. He's only a medium power bat, but he's stolen 14 bases. He's hit 12 home runs in 508 chances. He's a playable part. And then everybody down lineup is just absurdly cheap, so it helps average down the pricing of these two at worst. When I say absurdly, I just mean relative to the pricing of the entire slate, because these guys are all, mediocre or underperforming their talent, or in Shea Whitcomb's case, a brand new player. 12 plate appearances. He was tearing up the minor leagues, 2,500 at third base, 2,300 at shortstop. Definitely remains interesting to me down lineup. 141 WRC plus in his 12 plate appearances. Scored a run. Chas McCormick having a really disappointing season for 24-26. I'll always throw him into the mix if I'm building a bunch of Astros stacks. If I'm building one, he probably doesn't make it in, though. He's really disappointing year at 197, 265, 288. Just 4 home runs and 8 steals. Myers, not a bad option, 12 home runs and 9 steals, but we've really been in a decline as far as the slash line goes. We're down to 93 WRC plus. And then Mauricio Dubon is just cheap with multi-position eligibility, including second base, so he's a usable part in this lineup. Low strikeout, low walk, put the ball in play type for Dubon. The priorities are really up here, though. Oh, and then John Singleton is just cheap with a moderate amount of power. 10 home runs, but a 128 ISO. This goes Red Sox bats, Astros bats, Nick Pivetta, Ronel Blanco. All four corners are in play, but I'm skeptical about Blanco at those prices as compared to the rest of the slate, especially on FanDuel, by the way. That 99 is way out of line. That is not an appropriate price for this pitcher in this matchup. Yeah, Lara, obviously I was being facetious with saying the bruised shin. One would think that, yeah, there's some kind of fracture or something going on there. Dirk Dingler? We talked about him in his debut. I made that elaborate reference to Boogie Nights. I remember nothing about him when we looked him up. I actually didn't have to go back to the Tigers to do that. Hold on, we were at the Angels, right? Was it Dylan? 33 plate appearances, a 194 ISO. He's hit a home run. I don't think he was anybody when we looked him up. Tigers not exactly long on high-end prospects. Oh, actually, 25 years old. In AAA, though, he had 17 home runs this year in 301 chances, a 251 ISO, and a very good slash line. Had not really done that at any other stop in the minors. And again, 25, you're pushing the upper edges of where you'd want to be in AAA. But if you're going to Tigers already, you can throw him into the mix. Cole Ragans, elite option on this slate. 10-8 on FanDuel. Happy to pay it if I can find a way to afford it. 95 on DraftKings is very reasonable. 28.9% strikeout rate, a 3.18 ERA, a 3.31 xFIP, 14.8% swinging strike rate. One of the elite lefty pitchers in baseball. Definitely on the strong side of the there are lefties and there are lefties conversation. 108.28 by Stuff Plus. Love everything about the option against the Angels today. This version of the Angels lineup, a 25.3% strikeout rate. I'll see if we have a confirmed Angels lineup, which we do. Same thing for the Royals, which is good because they're a high priority offense to talk about real quick. So man, earworms are insane. As I was doing that in that like 10 seconds of silence that I gave myself while I was pasting those lineups in, the Guardians, that Guardians is easy to see, lowering my A1C. That jingle popped into my head and I was just doing it in my head as I was doing that. This show brought to you by Guardians. This show actually brought to you by our pals over at acemind.io. Check them out for all your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over there. Strongly encourage you to check them out before football season. Get familiar with the tools. They offer a 3-day free trial. Maybe you throw it at one of the preseason slates if that's available. Definitely worth checking out for that. And then when NBA gets around, forget it. We're going to be in there all the time. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle, and that'll keep us rolling. So Ragans is a premium option. Tyler Anderson a lot less so. 8,200, 9,000. He's got a 3.30 ERA, but a 4.77 xFIP. He's got a 9.2% walk rate and a 19.3% strikeout rate. Pretty good swinging strike rate at 12.4%, but Stuff Plus doesn't really like him. 5 points below average, giving up a fair barrel rate despite just 32.4% hard hits, 86.9 miles an hour of exit velo. When he's made mistakes, they've been pretty loud. 3.13% home run rate. That's indicative of some mistakes on a fly ball trajectory. Typically, he's inducing weak and medium on a fly ball trajectory, and he's fine, but can lose one every now and again. And there are some significant home run bats on this Royal squad, and they're pulling the third highest total on the slate, second highest at 4.70. So I'm not really inclined to go there. I don't think he's cheap enough to justify it at 82 on DraftKings. Definitely not at 9,000 on FanDuel. 5 2/3 of 7-run ball on 6 hits against Toronto in his last one. Struck out 8 but walked 4. Struck out 7 Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Allowed just 1 run on a solo homer, 3 hits. That was a good one. couple of three-run games, over 5 against the Mets and over 7 against the A's. The A's game he struck out 10. Also struck out 10 against the Cubbies over 8 innings earlier in the season. Typically, you're finding him more in the 4 or 5 strikeout range. Against this low strikeout Royal squad where most of their best hitters are also super low for strikeouts, I tend to prefer the bats. I don't think you play the Angels against Cole Ragans, even for leverage, cheap pricing, whatever you want to talk about. I don't really see it. He's too good for them. If you're going there, Taylor Ward is a priority bat, even with as bad as he's been in recent months. Righty with a little bit of power. He's got a 5.03 to lead this team in the home run model today. 158 ISO, 96 WRC+, 16 dingers on the season. Zach Neto, 18 home runs to lead tie for the team lead with Joe Adell. 22 stolen bases, a 199 ISO, 119 WRC+, easily their best player and their top priority bat now. Nolan Shanuel, 37-27 across sites, is cheap. Gets on base at a decent 342 clip. Weird spot to find him hitting third, but lefty-lefty. I guess I get that that's why they moved him sort of down the lineup. I don't really see the gain from moving him from first to third because there's a lefty on the mound. Like you're just moving a guy with a good on-base percentage down to a spot that's still going to come up in the first inning and multiple times through the game. It's kind of a weird move, but who else do they have? Kevin Pillar, as mentioned by I think it was Larry in the chat, or it might have been Steven, hitting cleanup today, 44-26, 7 home runs on the year. Decent success over the course of his career against lefties, but Cole Ragans is a really good lefty. This is Kevin Pillar we're talking about. It's not exactly worth going to. Logan O'Hoppe, good right-handed catcher power, 4,300, 2,900, 4.95 to sit second on this team in the home run model. He's at 17 this year, 176 ISO. Third priority bat in this lineup, Neto, O'Hoppe, then Ward. Probably then Kevin Pillar. Anthony Rendon I don't want at all at 36-25, and I don't think you should either. Brandon Drury I don't want at all at 25-23, having the worst year of his career by a long stretch. Joe Adell gets more interesting at 34-28, bad spot in the lineup, but an interesting bat, 18 home runs, 14 steals. Probably on the board for shares if you're going to this team, but don't go to this team. And then Jack Lopez at the bottom of the lineup, cost the dead men on both sides. 0-4 in his Major League career so far. Oh, I guess that's not for his career. Excuse me. Apologies to Mr. Lopez. He is 31, almost 32. He's made 20 plate appearances in the show, and he has 2 hits. And we're very proud of him. Totally skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Royals, really interesting stack today. We got Michael Garcia off the top. Second and third base eligibility on both sides. 4,500, 2,800. Not a bad option. 6 home runs, 30 steals. Pretty mediocre year overall, but there's a lot of talent in that player, I'm telling you. 516 plate appearances, 237, 283, 342, a 71 WRC+, so why not put him back in the leadoff spot? I continue to think that, if they're putting guys with sub 300 on bases up there anyway, just give it to Garcia and let him finish out the year up there and see if he can pull anything together. That said, Freddie Fermin's in the lineup again, and he's the guy who should be leading off for this team. So weird. Bobby Witt, superstar shortstop, 66, 46, 25 homers, 25 steals, a 265 ISO. Creating runs 75% better than average. Totally justified for 66, 46 against this pitcher. And honestly, just like with some of those other teams, no real issues with it. Top 4 of the average price, 3,400. Fits right in with the O's and the other ones in the FanDuel pricing paradigm. And then if you say skip, I don't want to occupy first base and util, so I'll skip Sal and go Vinny and those guys, and then I'll grab Hunter Renfroe at 26, 3,300, lowers it a little bit. If you do it the other way, take Sal, not Vinny, brings it to 32. On DraftKings, your top 5 is giving you a $4,900 price, so it's a little bit more than the top 5 was from the Orioles, but similarly very, very high end. Vinny, 4,900, 3,300, 18 home runs, a 188 ISO, a 109 WRC+. Since the All-Star break, 126 plate appearances, 319, 352, 543, 7 home runs, an 11.9% strikeout rate, 17 runs scored, and 30 ribbies. That's per Eric Cross on Twitter. Vinny's just a really good hitter. I continue to harp on a very low strikeout, tons of hard hits, good ability to strike the ball with the bat, one of the RBI leaders in all of baseball. It's a significant option, and he only costs $49.33. He's a positional, not conflict, but difficulty in terms of stacking this team because you want him and Sal both in the lineup more often than not. On DraftKings, that's less of an issue because it's just a straightforward catcher first base, where here it's catcher first base as the same position and then occupying my util spot, so I can't do like the dual shortstops like him and Corey Seager in a lineup. You have to make a sacrifice among these two if you do that, or the other team's first baseman. Renfroe, 35-26, has 11 home runs on the season, a 158 ISO, 91 WRC+. Pulled things together, still a mediocre year, but low strikeout, medium walk. The ability to hit for power is not completely gone, which is nice to see. Freddie Fermin, second catcher in this lineup, 298, 349, 416. Creating runs 12% better than average. Not really a power bat, but a good on-base, low strikeout, put the ball in play kind of a hitter. Paul DeJong is a power bat, but that's all he is. 21 home runs, very high strikeout at 30.8%, pushing this team's strikeout rate up, as are Dayron Blanco, who continues to give us high-end DFS games. Blanco, in 114 plate appearances, has stolen 22 bases despite getting on at just a 295 clip. He's also hit four home runs, 89 WRC+, because of that ridiculously low on base. But it seems like he's creating fantasy points a lot of the time for a very cheap price, $31.27. Not a bad option. Garrett Hampson, mix and match caliber for a cheaper price. Cole Ragans, Royals bats, 1-2 right next to each other in terms of priorities, hitting and pitching. I like the idea of putting Ragans together with some Royals bats. If you can get away with that, just bolsters his win upside. Not a bad stack over there. And then really it's nothing from the Angels. If it's anything, it's probably Tyler Anderson on DK. But I really don't like that at all against, again, the second highest total on the slate. And just a low strikeout, pretty good Royals team. The Rays, the A's. Don't think we have lineups for this one. So Shane Baz checks in with just a 20.1% strikeout rate, a 4.21 ERA, and a 4.52 xFIP on the season. That includes, most recently, 7 innings against a very good Astros team. He gave up 3 earned runs on 7 hits, but again, went 7 against the Stros. Struck out 6. Walked 2 home runs allowed. Some bad in there with some good. But it's nice to see the depth. It's very nice to see that strikeout total against the Astros. You could pile up strikeouts against this A's team if you could do that to the Astros. Earlier in the year, in July 26th, had a 7 strikeout game. His debut was a 6 strikeout game over 6 innings against the Rangers on July 5th. He's got a lot of ability. Facing a low-end Athletics team. 7,600 is very cheap to find Shane Baz in this matchup on DraftKings. 8,100 is very interesting on FanDuel just because of how that makes things work. Baz right here, Bradford right there. Both those guys make things work on FanDuel. The fact that I can get Baz for 200 less than Cody Bradford with probably a little bit more of an appreciable ceiling on the right day, it's compelling. I think between the two, the A's are probably the better lineup overall. A little bit more threatening than the Pirates are. But between the two pitchers, I think Baz is probably the more talented guy. He projects out a little higher. Very fair pricing. On the other side, Joey Estes going up against the high strikeout, pretty bad Rays lineup. At least worthy of consideration. 4.72 ERA is ugly. The 5.14 xFIP is even uglier. Just a 17.9% strikeout rate. Terrible CSW. A okay swinging strike rate. Struck out 6 against the Dodgers a few starts back. Went 6 innings, just 2 earned runs. Walked 2, gave up a home run. It's the best thing I can point to. 8 strikeout game against the Angels way back in the end of June. Similar opponent there. Overall, it's probably not going to work. The guy's got a 17.9% strikeout rate for the year. He's given up a lot of barrels at 9.5%, given up a lot of home runs at 3.53%. The Rays have some capable bats, especially when it comes to power hitting. Brandon Lau at 11.85 in the home run model reflects that. Junior Caminero, the big-time prospect call-up, 8.37 in the home run model for an extremely cheap price. I do think it's a both-sided situation, but at 63 on DraftKings, I think you can get away with some value shares of Joey Estes, just as a total punt of a bargain bin play. But against a 26.7% strikeout rate for this projected version of the Rays lineup, there's some reason to believe that you can find some success there. 71 on FanDuel, it's tighter, but they're not shy about giving Estes innings. if he's going all right, 5 1/3 in a 3-run game in his most recent start against the Mets. Had that 6-inning game 3 starts ago against the Dodgers. In between, it was a okay outing. 2 earned runs against the White Sox. Only went 5, struck out 4, gave up a home run, 6 hits. 2 2/3 against the Angels. Not sure what happened there. He was all right. But a 5 2/3 game, a 6-inning game, had a complete game, 9-inning game against the Angels back on July 3rd. Struck out 4, 5 hits allowed, no runs. So there is upside for 6 innings out of Estes. It's not completely off the table at 71. If you, for some reason, need to get even cheaper than Baz at 81, he's down here. But he's probably got a slightly shorter ceiling, but he's got a little bit of ceiling on him. More so than Ronaldo against Philly, more so than Montas, probably more than Miller against the Dodgers, as rough a matchup as that is for the price difference at least. Probably more than Buehler for a short start there. So Estes, despite being down here, maybe a little bit more in consideration. I think the green, the dark green coloring should be what you kind of focus on there as compared to some of these middle options. If you take any Joey Estes, definitely grab some Rays as a hedge position. Yandy Diaz is a priority if you do that. 10 home runs for him, just a 122 ISO, but still getting on at a 331 clip. It's a diminished season for Yandy in a lot of ways, but still a 49.5% hard hit rate against a very low strikeout rate. I will take my chances with that. There's a lot of upside for that player. Brendan Lau, again, a lot of power. 16 home runs and 297 chances, a 256 ISO, creating runs 39% better than average. He's not really been the problem when he's been healthy. He's been pretty good for the Rays. 4,800 on DraftKings, first and second base. 35 at second base on FanDuel is totally fine. Jose Caballero, 3,900, 3,100, 35 stolen bases, but just a 293 on base percentage. If you could push that, this would get better as with that. Mediocre in most other facets of hitting. Josh Lowe, 39-31, has a lot of ability, 7 home runs and 17 steals. Just a 298 on base out of him, but still squeezing out a 101 WRC+. Was a lot better last year, but still hits the ball pretty hard. Probably my third priority bats, probably 1, 2, 3 as you go down that lineup. And then again, a very cheap Junior Caminero, 3,100 for third base and shortstop eligibility on DraftKings, and a priority in this lineup at 2,400 third base only on FanDuel. Again, the kid is the top, I believe, 5 prospect in all of baseball. Top prospect for them was it first prospect, top prospect for them, second overall in all of baseball, something along those lines. He's elite. Dylan Carlson, 3,300, 2,600, just another outfielder, mix and match quality. Maybe next year, somebody to keep in mind if he's on this team. Jose Cedri, 32, 26, 14 home runs, 12 stolen bases, just an 82 WRC+. He's okay for counting stats. It's about all you get out of him, but capable of giving you a big game with the way that he hits the ball. Just extreme high strikeout at 36.8%, 35.7% last year. Kind of an is who he is kind of a guy. Taylor Walls, Alex Jackson, mix and match quality at best. Both sub-Mendoza, both way below 300 on base. Jackson can give you the occasional power shot, 10.1% barrels in his limited opportunities, but they're both pretty bad at the bottom of the lineup. If you go to the A's, I think it's reasonable against Shane Baz. Like I said, I do think they're a better team than, say, the Pirates. Probably better than the Rays on the other side. Lawrence Butler's cooled off after that ridiculously hot stretch, but he still has a 212 ISO, 113 WRC+, 13 homers and 10 stolen bases. He leads into Brent Rooker, their top priority bat, 54-37. You can take some shares of Brent Rooker against the pitcher like Shane Baz for sure. Baz has given up a 47.3% hard hit rate and 92.2 miles an hour of exit velo, despite the good stuff, despite the low home run rate allowed. Brent Rooker could absolutely go yard here. 14.64 in the home run model, 29 on the season, 281 ISO. 202 ISO out of J.J. Bleday. He's got 16 homers from the left side and 496 chances. He's exceedingly cheap at 4,100, 2,800, 6.62 in the home run model. Not terrible. Miguel Andujar, 4,000, 2,700. He's cheap. He's hitting 284, 321, 383, a 103 WRC+. Not really a power bat anymore, but capable enough. Shea Langoliers, definitely a power bat. 22 home runs at 232 ISO. It's about all he does. 14.2% barrels and 43.7% hard hits. Decent catcher option. Seth Brown, 26-25. Very, very cheap for a guy who was very good a couple years ago. And honestly, in 279 plate appearances this year, 10 home runs isn't terrible for that. A 151 ISO, but making very good contact with a 9.1% barrel rate and capable of much more from the left side. He's just cheap. First base for 26 on DraftKings is fine because there's no other first base option. Another outfielder on this team is not ideal on FanDuel, but you can make it work at 2,500. Geloff for 35.29. decent priority second baseman, 15 home runs, 15 steals. I don't care as much about the rest of that line. I'll just take the cheap counting stats from Zach Geloff if I'm going to A's. Not a reason to go to the A's, not a one-off second baseman, really. Well, he's very cheap. He's in play as a one-off second baseman, but he's low priority as a one-off second baseman. Darrell Hernaiz and Max Schumann totally skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match parts at best. You go Schumann over Hernaiz more often than not. Shane Baz, Joey Estes, Rays bats, A's bats. Yeah, 414 total for the Rays, 393 for the A's. All right, Mr. Ober, pitching really well overall. 6 innings of 2-run ball, 7 hits allowed, just 3 strikeouts and 3 walks in a disappointing start against Texas, but that's still not a terrible DFS start. He booked a quality start. They didn't get him the win, which would have helped even more. Obviously, you're hoping for more strikeouts than that. But that was coming on the back of a 9 strikeout game over 6 innings against Cleveland, which is significant against Cleveland. 7 strikeouts with 2 runs allowed over 7 innings against the White Sox, and 11 strikeouts over 8 innings of shutout ball, 1 hit allowed against the Tigers. A couple of low-end opponents and then a very high-end opponent with Cleveland in that mix. He also had a good 7-inning start against the Phillies a few starts back. 6 innings against the White Sox, successful quality start there. He was on a run of... He is on a run of 10 straight quality starts. In that stretch, he's got, looks like 7 wins. He's got a 10 strikeout game, an 11 strikeout game, 2 9 strikeout games, and an 8 strikeout game. A lot of those opponents, though, you're talking about the White Sox twice, the Tigers twice, the Mariners, the A's. There's a Phillies in there, there's a Cleveland in there, but, you know, he's benefited from the schedule a little bit. He's got his price pushed up all the way to 10,000 against a very low strikeout, pretty decent quality Padres lineup. I don't love it at 10,000 on FanDuel. I think it's playable. 26.5% strikeout rate. Not all of that came against those low-end opponents. 3.49 ERA with a 3.87 xFIP, 13.9% swinging and 29.3% CSW. He's been an excellent strike thrower this season. It's just the Pods are very good at making a wash of that. 8,400 on DraftKings is totally different. He's highly, highly playable / desirable on the DraftKings slate. That's a really good spot, even with the low strikeout Padres. Martin Perez on the other side, 6,800, 8,700. It is the same in that he's more desirable on the DraftKings slate at 68. 87, I don't think I want him at all on FanDuel. The Twins are just too good for that. 19% strikeout rate for this projected Twins lineup. He's got an 18.9% strikeout rate, just under 8% walks, giving up a lot of premium contact and power on just under a 4% home run rate, 1.49 whip, 71 rating by Stuff Plus. I think that's the worst on the slate. Pretty thin for Martin Perez at 87. 68, you can make it work, but there's better options in that price range. Last time out for Perez, 5 1/3 of 1-run ball on 5 hits against the Pirates, 8 strikeouts there. 2-run game over 7 innings, 3 hits against the Marlins, 6 strikeout game there, and faced the Rockies and gave up just 1 earned run on 3 hits over 6 innings and struck out 7 in that game. He's given up home runs in each of those games, 1 to the Rockies, 2 to the Marlins, and 1 to the Pirates. But, you know, similarly benefited recently from a pretty soft stretch of teams. It's probably what juiced his price a little bit on FanDuel. DraftKings didn't respond, appropriately didn't respond. Loosely playable. Greatly prefer the Twins bats, prefer the Padres bats, but the over price on DraftKings shouldn't be ignored. The Twins, if you get Manny Margot leading off, it's just because there's a lefty on the mound. He's very mediocre. 238, 292 at the front end of the slash line, a 79 WRC plus. Even against the lefty, like, who cares? He just doesn't give you that much. I don't know. Totally skippable at the top of the lineup. Carlos Santana, low strikeout, decent amount of power, 18 home runs, 17.2% Ks, a 39.1% hard hit rate, 189 ISO, and a 114 WRC plus. Reasonably good option for a cheap price at first base. Royce Lewis at third, 5,600, 3,700, has 15 home runs and just 187 plate appearances. Monster 333 ISO. I don't know what this is trying to do. Can you guys hear me? Nobody's trying to do that. The fuck was that about? That was weird. Something went away over there. Anyway, continuing on, Royce Lewis, superstar level talent, monster home run bat. Everybody knows that. 16.14 in the home run model. Top priority Twins bat, but there's a bunch of good options. Jose Menando, 44.28. A reasonably good line drive hitter, slashing 305, 345, 491, a 134 WRC plus. I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, thanks. I don't know what that issue that popped up was there, but I'm glad you can hear me. Ryan Jeffers, catcher with power, 19 home runs and 368 plate appearances, a 233 ISO. Costs just 4,300 somehow, where you have to play catchers against Martin Perez. Righty bat with a ton of thunder. That's a great catcher option. 4,300 Jeffers is in play as a catcher one-off from that spot, especially if he's hitting fifth. 3,200 he's in play like a first baseman on FanDuel. Willie Castro, a good mix and match option, 4 positions on FanDuel, just 1 on DraftKings, not ideal at 4,600 in shortstop only. 3,004 positions, a lot more playable on FanDuel. 10 homers, 12 steals, a lot of runs scored this season, a decent run creator at 112 WRC+. Not a superstar, but a playable part in this lineup. Kyle Farmer, 23-21. We went to him a lot last year and succeeded with him. Not so much this year. 174 pretty bad plate appearances from him. He's in play if he's in the lineup, but pretty low end, just cheap multi-position. Trevor Larnach, tons of power, 3,600, 2,800, 12 home runs on the season. Martin Perez is on the low end of the lefties conversation, so you can definitely throw Larnach against him. If Wallner works his way into the lineup, you can take shares of him again with just all the power upside. I'll take shares of those guys, especially if they're low owned against this pitcher. Austin Martin, mix and match caliber from the bottom of the lineup. Padres, I'm trying to hit the gas pedal a little bit here, 607. Luis Arias from the top of the lineup, not ideal at first base, but a very good contact hitter, good table setter. 2,900 with second base eligibility is where I prefer him on FanDuel, but you can take shares of Luis Arias to start off a Padres stack. That said, the Pods against over, not completely ideal with as good as he's been pitching. 3.97 implied total for them, puts him below 4. Arias is a priority bat, so is Profar, 8.59 to lead the team in the second on the team to Higgy in the home run model, ahead of Manny. 19 homers for him, a 179 ISO, 146 WRC plus in a tremendous season. He's still not all that expensive. 49 on DraftKings, more expensive on FanDuel. Cronenworth, 46, 3,000, mediocre, 15 home runs, a 159 ISO, but been good for run creation, and another guy who's very low strikeout at 17.7%. Manny's a top priority bat in this lineup at 51.34, 19 home runs for him, a 114 WRC+. Bogarts is also high priority, 4,400, 2,900 infield eligible, second base on DraftKings, shortstop, second base on FanDuel. 6 homers, 7 steals, a mediocre season, over 325 plate appearances. But if you doubled that, I would like his second 300 plate appearances to be higher end than this. I still think he's good. Jackson Merrill, presumptive runner-up for the Rookie of the Year award in the National League, 4,700, 3,300, 17 homers, 13 steals, a 194 ISO, 125 WRC+. Having a great year, coming in as a rookie, striking out just 17.9% against 4.6% walks with 9.9% barrels and 43.5% hard hits. That's elite level contact. He's been very good this year. He's not expensive enough on DraftKings. Peralta, mix and match caliber outfielder at best, veteran hitter, 6 home runs, decent slash line, 116 WRC+. Higgy, tons of catcher power for just 37.29, 14 home runs. Not an ideal spot in the lineup. Between the two, probably pull shares of Jeffers first against the pitcher and for a better lineup spot. But Higgy's not out of play down there. He's a good power hitting catcher. Tyler Wade, more of a mix and match guy at the bottom at best. Pretty low end option. Twins bats, Bailey Ober, Padres bats, no Martin Perez for me. With apologies to Mr. Davis Martin, we're just going to kind of skip him. 4.79 xFIP, 12.8% walks. He's been okay at managing power despite the 12% barrels, but the Giants have the highest implied total on the slate, and seems like a spot that's going to work against Davis Martin. 65, I wouldn't want him on DraftKings. 73, I wouldn't want him on FanDuel. Dead at the average on stuff, plus whatever. Is there any reason to consider him? Fuck. A couple of good outings in a row. 5 2/3, he gave up a run, struck out 5, but walked 3 against the Yanks. That's the reason I had to put him on the board. 6 innings. Can't sit here wearing a Yankees hat and say that he did that and wasn't good. 6 innings of 2-hit ball against the Athletics. Reasonably comparable team on the other side of the bay. 2 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts and a walk. Shutout over 6 innings. Bad one against the Twins before that. Okay over 2 2/3 against the Mariners prior to that one. It's still really low end. Maybe the ballpark helps him. Maybe the cold conditions in San Francisco help him defy the odds and succeed here. Does he go out and win the slate even in a scenario where he defies the odds and has an okay MLB start? Probably not. Robbie Ray, on the other hand, 8,600, 9,700. Like I said, giving you basically everything that you would expect from Robbie Ray so far. A monstrous, ugly, ridiculous home run rate on a ton of barrels. Check. A 6 ERA but a 4.25 xFIP. Check. A ridiculously high swinging strike rate with a good CSW. Check. 30+% strikeouts. Check. 13% walks. Check. It's just Robbie Ray. This is what he does. 97 on FanDuel. It's a high price, but he's got a very high ceiling. Also a monstrous basement. 8,600 on DraftKings. I think he becomes a high priority pitcher over there. Here, I can get around Robbie Ray, honestly. If it burns me, it burns me. It's one of the highest, one of the worst opponents or best opponents in baseball, highest quality matchups on the board. But I think that draws a ton of attention. Even the White Sox could succeed against that kind of a walk rate if he comes out and hits 2 hitters again, like he did against Atlanta when he melted down. Put extra guys on base, even against the worst team in baseball, and it can burn you. So I don't love the Robbie Ray shares, but I wouldn't begrudge anybody, and I definitely wouldn't tell you were making a mistake. He obviously projects out as one of the best pitchers on the entire slate, and for the money over here, totally fine. I'm just not totally comfortable with the option. I never have been. I never really have trusted Robbie Ray. In outside of the 2/3 of an inning and 5 earned runs in the last outing, he gave us 6. Allowed 2 earned runs, struck out 7 against the Tigers. Just went 5 against the Reds in Cincinnati, but struck out 9. 2 runs allowed on 3 hits. 4 runs allowed on 7 hits over 4 1/3 against Oakland. Struck out 4, walked 3, and allowed 3 home runs in that game. 8 strikeouts over just 5 innings with 2 walks, 1 earned run on no hits against the Dodgers in his debut for the season. You can get extremely high-end games out of Robbie Ray. Not saying that's not the case, especially against the White Sox team with a 25.5% strikeout rate and just a 7.3% walk rate for this projected version of the lineup. That he can be very problematic and he can absolutely destroy you as well. Would not roster White Sox bats against Robbie Ray for all those same reasons. Just because of how high quality he is and the entirely unpredictable nature of his downside. He has to be bad for them to succeed. It's not that they are going to be good randomly and he's gonna fail. So I don't think much of them. Lou Bob's your top priority at 43, 33, 14 homers, 18 steals. Benintendi's up to 13 homers, but he basically sucks in every other facet of the game. Vaughn has 14 home runs, mediocre, 95 WRC plus, sub 300 on base. Nobody on this team gets on base at even a 300 clip. It's pathetic. Lenyn Sosa from the top spot, 2,500, 2,300, mix and match infielder at best. 4 home runs, 3 steals, a 51 WRC plus. Corey Lee, 2,200, 2,400, probably your second or third priority bat on this team. 10 home runs from the catcher spot. Just buy cheap catcher power if you're going here. Miguel Vargas, Nick Senzel, Corey Jokes, Brooke Baldwin, they're all just so skippable down lineup. Not a single one of those guys above 82 WRC plus. The average for the bottom 5 hitters in this lineup is a 73 WRC plus. The average for the 9-man is 75 WRC plus. This team is bad. The Giants a lot more appealing on their side of things. Again, the highest run total on the board at 4.92. Definitely a lot of offensive upside against Davis Martin. You get Tyler Fitz at 8.34 in the home run model, 14 on the year, 14 stolen bases, 299 ISO since coming up. He's been one of the best shortstops in baseball. He's priced that way now, but definitely playable from the top. I think he'll be popular today, but he's in the mix. Lamont Wade, 3,500, 2,600. I'm hoping slips off the priority window of radar of a lot of people out there. 402 on base for Wade, a 128 WRC plus. Great table setter, great run creator. Elliot Ramos, 46-31, has 18 home runs on the season. Michael Conforto has 13 home runs, 2 guys above 200 ISOs. You also get Matt Chapman above 200 ISO, 20 home runs and 12 stolen bases. All 3 of those guys, high priority bats for power upside in this lineup. Not a single one of them above even 8 in the home run model, but all 3 of them have been hitting for good power upside this season, and they're going up against a very gettable pitcher. Despite the low home run mark, he's given up 12% barrels. Mike Yastrzemski, Tyler Estrada down lineup a little bit, 33 and 37 on DraftKings, 27 and 24 on FanDuel, 9 home runs apiece. Yaz is having the slightly better season. Neither guy has been playing entirely up to standards, but he's at least above average for run creation, a 177 ISO, a reasonable lefty power bat. Estrada, 9 home runs, just 1 stolen base, and a 249 on base percentage is really bad from a guy who last year went 271, 315, 416 with 14 homers and 23 steals, had a decent season. Grant McCray mix and match quality at the bottom of the lineup. So is Kurt Casale as a catcher bat. 2,100, 2,000, 82 pretty empty plate appearances out of him so far. Giants bats, Robbie Ray. Nothing from the White Sox for me. Thank you very much. Last game up. Bryce Miller has his work cut out for him against the Dodgers. Low strikeout Dodgers team. Back to basically full strength. Challenging spot for Miller. He's not overly high priced on DraftKings, 8,300. You can see him succeed here. 5-6 strikeouts, 6 innings, a quality start, a win. The win is a little bit much, but there's reason to believe that he can succeed for the price. I don't love it over here. That just puts him in range with a lot of the top end guys on this slate. So why target the Dodgers? He's got a 23.4% strikeout rate, a 5.7% walk rate, 3.29 ERA with a 3.88 xFIP, good swinging strike rate, mediocre CSW, but very good rating by Stuff Plus. He's allowed some premium contact for sure, probably getting a little bit lucky at 2.92% home runs, so it feeds the upside for power a little bit for the Dodgers lineup. I prefer the Dodgers to Bryce Miller, but I do think Bryce Miller's playable. I prefer I prefer Walker Buehler to the Mariners, but I question how playable Buehler is. Just his second start back, went 3 1/3 in the first one, faced 18 hitters, 3 strikeouts, 4 walks, not exactly efficient. So I do think 5 innings is in the cards. I don't know that 6 innings is. Would need to pitch really efficiently to hit the 6 innings. So kind of a question mark there. Also just hadn't been good in his starts prior to hitting the IL. 9 starts, 40 1/3, 5.58 ERA, 4.54 xFIP, 18.3% strikeout rate for the season. So even against this targetable Mariners team, it throws it into question a little bit. We talked about the M's earlier. They're very, very cheap. There's a lot of multi-position guys on FanDuel, fewer on DraftKings, but there's a couple in the mix, and nobody above even 4,800 on the DraftKings slate, where you find Julio, 46 for Rotoscouts, not bad. They combine well with other teams because you don't have a priority shortstop on this team. You don't really have any priority infielders on this team, honestly. It's the catcher and then a handful of outfielders. So I like the way they fit together with basically anybody not like other than like the Yanks. Maybe they don't fit together great with the Red Sox, but with like the Royals in particular, with the Rangers, who I think was the team that somebody mentioned earlier. They're an interesting fit. You get Buehler and then half a game of bullpen arm. Not bad. Dodgers bullpen isn't bad, but it's not a terrible spot. You could see the Mariners succeeding here. Victor Robles off the top, 37-28, has 18 steals and 187 plate appearances, getting on at a 326 clip. Little pop in his bat. He's hit 3 home runs in the small sample. 102 WRC+. We'll see how he maintains, but getting a regular shot at the top of the lineup is good for him. Randy Arozarena is a star, not having a star caliber season, but he is creating runs at a 111 clip. So is Cal Raleigh. Raleigh's hit for more power with 27 home runs in 471 chances. Arozarena's 16 in 496. But the outfielder obviously has more speed with 17 stolen bases. You also get Julio at 11 home runs and 18 stolen bases. This guy and this guy, pretty similar players. 442 chances. Julio's giving you a little bit more in terms of the average, but not the on-base, not the run creation mark, and definitely not the power output this year. But he's very playable when he comes in at 4,800, 3,000, considering what he's done in the last 2 seasons. Jorge Polanco, 4,000, 2,800, a deprioritized second baseman. If you stretch for 5 on DraftKings, you can put him in, but he's not important. 12 home runs, a 145 ISO, 95 WRC+. Luke Raley, probably preferable to Polanco, 3,900, 2,900 on FanDuel, 5.98 in the home run model, a lefty bat with 15 home runs on the season, 196 ISO, a 113 WRC+. I'd probably go to him with those guys if I was stacking up Mariners. Justin Turner, mix and match at best at this point in his career, 247, 343, 358, a 106 WRC+. Revenge game for Justin Turner against the Dodgers. Josh Rojas, Dylan Moore, mix and match caliber. Multi-position for both guys at the bottom of the lineup for cheap prices. Capable of giving you some counting stats on the right day, but neither guy is at all consistent. Dodgers have a run of superstars for you at the top of the lineup. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman playable in all circumstances. You have Max Muncy back in this lineup now. You've got Gavin Lux starting to succeed in this lineup. They've got Tommy Edman in this lineup now down toward the bottom. If you forget about him, pretty good for like medium strength home run power and some stolen base output. Comes and goes in terms of his ability to reach first base, but does a lot on the field in general and is very cheap at second base. 3 positions on the FanDuel slate. Miguel Rojas isn't having a bad season from the bottom of the lineup. He's cheap as well with multi-position there. Don't love him at $3,700 shortstop only on DraftKings. Muncy's a tremendous power hitter of a third baseman, 10 home runs and 171 plate appearances. Missed a big chunk of the season, but he's back. 266 ISO from the left side, premium bat to throw at Bryce Miller. Will Smith, 5,200 high-end catcher with 16 homers, a 186 ISO. Lux, again, starting to find some success. 9 home runs, a 140 ISO, 100 league average at WRC+. And then all 4 of these guys hit for a ton of power. Some of them steal some bases. They get on base at a pretty regular clip. Even Teoscar at 328 is not terrible. Everybody creates a ton of runs. That top 4 WRC plus average is 148. So man for man, they're each worth essentially half an additional player as a run creator. Not bad. Dodgers bats, Mariners bats, Bryce Miller over Walker Buehler. It is 6:21. I'm going to do this as quickly as possible because I really got to get some projection updates up on the site. Wheeler and Raggins, super, super high priority at the top of the board. Both in good matchups, both highly likely to succeed and put up competitive scores to win the slate. Let's put it that way. Robbie Ray, less so. I don't trust him at all, but he is definitely offset by price, so that takes care of a lot of my concerns. So does the matchup against the White Sox. Could easily go out there and win the slate. Among the top-end pitchers, he's my least favorite. Bailey Ober could definitely succeed, especially on DraftKings at 84. Has been on an absolute roll, 10 quality starts in a row. Very good strikeout stuff this season. Just a tough opponent to find the strikeout ceiling, but could go 7-8 innings of clean ball. 10,000 is pretty high priced, and I'll remind you, most of those 10 quality starts came against very bad baseball teams. Ronel Blanco, don't trust him at all against the Red Sox. I prefer the Red Sox bats. 99 is too expensive for me on FanDuel. I don't want it. 8,800 is more reasonable on the DraftKings slate. Shane Baz is downright interesting. 81.76 across sites against the A's. Think there's upside there. Pivetta challenged by the low strikeout, high quality Astros, but 8,600 for a 30% strikeout pitcher is interesting. 7,800 is definitely interesting. Baz, Pivetta, and Bradford all easy to reach from the mid-range or like the, even a little bit lower than the mid-range price-wise. 83, 81 for Bradford against that low-end Pirates team. Definitely playable and probably not going to be crazy high-owned. Luis Gil I don't like at all at 96, 9,000. I think that's too high price to grab Luis Gil in Yankee Stadium against that low strikeout, high-quality Guardians team. I hope he has a great game. I'm going to be watching that game. I hope the Yankees win that game, but 96, 9,000 feels challenging, even as good as Gil has been. Pitching over his head in terms of the runs, the strikeouts are fine, but that's a tough target for strikeouts. Keller against the Rangers is not poorly priced, but he's very mediocre in terms of his actual production, his quality this year. The high end comes and goes, the low end comes in a lot more often. Jose Berrios, pretty low end pitcher, but at 8,000 he's more playable on DraftKings. Same with Keller at 77, by the way. 88.93 for those two is a little bit tough to reach on FanDuel. 9,000 for Tyler Anderson, same thing against the Royals. Pretty tough to reach on FanDuel. 82, more reasonable, more playable on DraftKings. Buehler, I don't think you get the innings on FanDuel. Maybe a few darts for 5 innings at 75 on DraftKings, but it's pretty low end by comparison to everybody else in that price tier. Fede, I don't really have a lot of faith. 84.79 just kind of falls by the wayside for me. Same thing with Dean Kramer at 82.73. These guys are all playable through this range on DraftKings, though. If you're building 150 lineups and your approach is to build a bunch of diversity into your SP2 shares, then all those guys are definitely in the mix. Probably Buehler the least so, though, on that innings concern. Jose Quintana, for the cheap pricing, 78.72, definitely makes things work in that mix on DraftKings. And in 150 lineups, you could throw a few darts of that. Probably won't work for you, but he's got the ability to go 7 clean innings against even that Orioles team. Miller against the Dodgers, mediocre pricing, 89, 83, not a great fit for a very good pitcher against that Dodgers team. Montas, no faith against the low-end Cardinals. 79, I don't really feel the need to go there. I like a lot of these other pitchers up here a lot better. 7,000 on DK, a lot more reasonable. You can play Montas a little bit more on DK. Ronaldo, don't think you're getting the innings or the quality against Philly. Joey Estes, definitely on the board. Bargain bin option for sure. 71 on FanDuel, 63 on DraftKings is very interesting against that high strikeout low-end Rays team. He's just not that good, so know that you're just taking a bad pitcher against a bad team. Probably going to at least creates a lane for him to succeed at those prices. Assad against Detroit, don't think you're getting much innings. Maybe for 69 on DraftKings, you can throw it a few times. Davis Martin, challenging. 65 would be the only place to do it on DraftKings. Spears, same thing at 64. You do have an appreciable bargain bin on the DraftKings slate. I don't know that Perez is in it at 68. He's definitely not at 87 on FanDuel. But you could argue for Matthew Boyd shares at 66 on DraftKings. Again, not on FanDuel. Salmon's not on the slate, not on the board at all. Bulk reliever and pretty bad. But a deep pitching slate. I mean, I literally said, like, everybody from here up is playable. But it's a very strong bargain bin. All these guys are bad pitchers, but it's a strong bargain bin for bargain bin pitchers. It's a solid mid-range with a few exceptions. Don't like Luis Hill at that price. Don't think you're getting the innings there. But everybody else is in play. Don't think you're getting the innings for the price there. And then it's a fairly decent to strong top end. It's a really deep slate. Runs board reflects all the great pitching spots with all those low totals. Here's your home run board. As I pull this up, I'll remind you one more time to hit the like button. Subscribe if you've never subscribed. Follow the rotoscouts Twitter handle at rotoscouts. Pretty easy to find. Aaron Judge at the top of your board. Ian Happ is your home run pick of the day from the 2 spot. Love the look of the Cubs' power even with the wind blowing in. Hopefully that renders them low owned. Yankees look pretty great in their matchup. The Red Sox have some tremendous power numbers for their lefties. Tristan Casas, Rafael Devers, Tyler O'Neill, the righty, bypassing those guys. A lot of upside for the Red Sox in play. Decent enough slate. Check out acemind.io for your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps gets you 20% off the first month over there. Jump into our Discord if you've never been there before. Football projections in the works. Football model is going to be up and running soon enough. Can't wait for football season to get here. Going to be a lot of draft talk over the next couple of weeks. If you got best ball and everything, jump into the Discord. Let's get that football channel fired up. I know people are in there talking, but it's not active enough yet. So let's get that thing rolling. With that in mind, guys, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We will be back tomorrow for a Wednesday slate that I'm sure will be equally jam-packed. See ya.